At the beginning of the story, we see a boy going to a store. He looks very sad and dejected while buying something. He thinks to himself, I'm sick of this. Instead of a triangle kimbap that has hard rice and very little filling, I want warm, shiny rice with different ingredients in it. Instead of a can of beer with a mild taste and little bubbles, I want a beer with a strong scent and the right amount of bubbles. Then he buys kimbap and beer and returns to his house. Again, he starts thinking sadly while eating, instead of this place, I would like to go somewhere else where I can enjoy life with everyone. We learn that this boy belonged to an ordinary family. His family was very hard-working. After finishing school, he got into a good university, and by chance landed a job at a reputable company. But one day, both his mother and father passed away. Because of this, he fell into depression and remained that way for 4 years. Suddenly, he loses his job. Now he is working at a small game development company. While thinking about all this, he smells cigarette smoke coming from the direction of his window. When he goes to see who is smoking, he opens the window and sees a gate to another dimension. He is quite surprised. At the same time, he receives a notification on his phone about the seal gate. He wonders, am I the only one who can see this gate? If this is some kind of gate to the future, that would be even better. Still, if this is a way to change my life, I'd like to try it. But how should I use it? He tries to put an item inside the gate, but it doesn't go through. He then realizes that none of his items can pass through except for the one he had kept with him. He thinks further, it could happen that if I go inside I may not be able to return, but it doesn't matter. Let's go inside. Upon entering the dimensional gate, he arrives at an old house. Looking around, he thinks, this house looks very old. Everything here must be expensive. He looks out the window and enjoys the view of the village. After a while, he notices a shiny paper on the side table. It is a contract related to the dimensional gate. According to the contract, he can travel back and forth between 2 places, but the gate will only work twice. There is also another item called the subspace pocket. This pocket is connected to the gate and can be used to lift any item from Earth as long as the item's weight is within a certain limit. To use it, you must place your right hand on the item and your left hand in empty space. There are no restrictions on what you bring in, but the only thing you can take back is gold. The boy is shocked to learn that he is initially being given 1,000 gold coins for staying there. He reads further, if you sign this contract, you will learn the language of the Manhwa Empire. You have 7 days to think about it. If you do not sign within 7 days, all memories related to this dimensional gate will be erased. If you die for any reason, the contract will be automatically destroyed. If you want to sign it, place your right hand on this paper. The boy thinks 7 days is too much. I'll just sign it now. As soon as he signs, he learns the language of the Manhwa Empire. The boy is welcomed into the empire and given the name Cho Isu. He wonders, what can I become in this world? A nobleman? A feudal lord? A wizard? Well, it doesn't matter for now. I just want to stay here and escape the small problems of my life. A lady says to him, did you not like the food? He replies, no, it's not like that. I was just thinking about something. Anyway, maybe this food won't be enough to satisfy me. He once checks his room to confirm whether he exchanged all the gold for cash. He plans to return to that place again, but he loses consciousness and falls asleep. When he wakes up, he notices that he looks much younger. His skin has become shiny, the color of his hair has changed, and his nose is a bit sharper. He jokes to himself that maybe money was deducted from his gold for this new face. He then goes back to the same village and wonders, will my phone work here? Well, I don't really need to use it while I'm here. Opening the window of his room, he is once again shocked by the beautiful view. He sees a lady in the room next to his. She sees him too. Yasu thinks, is she a villager? My eyes made contact with her. Should I greet her? But the lady speaks first and asks, who are you? Yoziu introduces himself. The lady replies, this house has been empty for a long time. Did you just move in? Who are you? Did you get permission from the village chief? Izu answers, I'm an adventurer. I'm planning to stay for a week. If I decide to stay longer, I'll ask the chief for permission. Then the lady says, since you're here, come and have a meal. Oishi didn't expect her to be so polite. Then he goes to have a meal with them. In the next scene we see him sitting down to eat, but the lady gives him just one bowl of soup. Seeing this, he feels that the food is very simple. However, looking at it, it seems delicious. Anyway, it's better to try eating here than sitting alone at home drinking beer and eating triangle kimbap. Since he's going to stay here for some time, he thinks he should get used to the food. He then asks the lady her name. The lady tells him her name is Maggie Humphrey. He further asks, "Do you stay here alone?" Aunt Maggie replies, "My husband has gone to the bar to work, and my son lives in another town. Tell me, where have you come from?" Isu says, "I have come from Sioux City, Korea." Aunt Maggie replies, "You've really come from quite far." Then Isu says, "Now I would like to try eating this. Anyway, there's no spoon or fork here, which means I'll have to dip this bread in the soup and eat it." Looking at the soup, Isu thinks, "This kind of soup is also sold in our city, but many other types of ingredients are usually added to it." Aunt Maggie asks, "Won't you eat this?" Isu replies, "No, I will eat it." Aunt Maggie says, "Eat it before it gets cold." Isu thinks, "The bread is a bit hard, but when I dip it in the warm soup, it becomes soft and actually tastes really good, but something is missing. Oh, black pepper." Then he says to Maggie, "Excuse me, ma'am, do you have black pepper?" Maggie looks a bit surprised and asks, "Did you not like the food?" Isu replies, "No, it's not like that. In our city, black pepper is added to every kind of soup, that's why I asked." Aunt Maggie responds, "Maybe it's cheaper where you live, but here it is very expensive, so expensive that only noble people can afford it. I've never bought it in my life." Isu thinks maybe she doesn't like talking about black pepper. Then he says, "This bread and soup are really delicious. There's a deep hint of corn in it that makes it taste so good." Aunt Maggie replies, "Don't talk so much, just eat it." Isu says, "Forgive me, but if you don't mind, can I know the recipe?" Aunt Maggie, who was making something, says, "Okay, you want to know the recipe? Fine, come behind me." Then both of them go out of the room. Isu thinks, "The air here is much nicer and fresher than the air of the city." Aunt Maggie says to him, "Come here." Isu starts following her. Then he asks, "By the way, what's the name of this village?" Aunt Maggie replies, "This is Laudine." Isu starts looking around. Aunt Maggie says, "What are you doing? Come here and look carefully." We see some ingredients kept there, which include corn powder, Aunt Maggie's homemade butter, and onions grown in Laudine. Then Aunt Maggie explains the process of making the soup. First, the butter has to be melted, then fry the chopped onions until they turn brown. Onion acts as a sweetener, so there's no need to add anything else sweet. Isu thinks, "I didn't know onion could be used like this in corn soup." Aunt Maggie continues, "Next is this corn powder. I bought this corn from a local trader. He said it's a new crop, so we won't be able to get it for some time." Isu thinks, "It seems corn isn't very common here." Maggie says, "I thought I'd try making powder from this corn. It actually worked, so I continued doing it this way. Just mix a little of the corn powder with the fried onion, then add water and milk together, and boil it on a low flame. Finally, just add a little salt. Now it's ready." Isu is amazed watching the soup being made. He thinks the process is so simple, but even if I try making it, it probably won't taste this good. Aunt Maggie starts going inside the house with the soup. Isu takes something out of his pocket and gives it to her as a gift. Aunt Maggie looks at it and is very surprised. It is a mirror that looks quite expensive. Isu says, "You invited me to your house for food, so this is a small gift from me." Aunt Maggie thanks him, but then rudely hands the mirror back to Isu. Isu thinks, why is she acting so cold now? Then he asks her for directions to the library. Aunt Maggie gives him the directions, and Isu puts the rest of his thoughts aside and heads toward the library. As he walks, we see him looking through a window where he notices a girl. When she sees Isu, she runs away. Isu thinks maybe she's shy. He continues walking and eventually reaches the library. Upon entering, he sees a boy with a name tag that reads Shara, who is eating something. The boy welcomes Isu. Isu greets him, "Good morning," and thinks, this man must be at least 30 years old. By the way, what is he eating? The boy says, maybe we haven't met before. Isu replies, I'm an adventurer who has come to this village for a short time. My name is Isu. I'm from Seoul City, Korea. Isu looks around the library and thinks, this is a library, but it's better than the bookshelf at my home. There are only around 50 books here. Maybe these are all rare books. Still, I don't understand one thing. Why is such a good man taking care of this library? The boy asks Is, have you come here to look for something? Isu replies, yes, can you give me a map of the IR Empire? The boy brings him a map. Isu asks, can I borrow it? The boy replies, no, only people of this village are allowed to borrow books from the library. You have to read them here. As Isu starts looking at the map, the boy also starts observing it with great curiosity, seeing which Isu thinks. He seems genuinely interested. He is very worried and thinks, I will have to flip the pages carefully. If a page gets torn by mistake, it will probably cause me a lot of trouble. Looking at the map, Isu says to the boy, this is a map, there's nothing on it except the sketch of the coastline and the continent. The boy replies, in Man it's illegal to put cities or villages on the map. He then points to a place and asks, is this Lauren village? Isu says to the boy, is it because of war? The boy responds, yes, that's why a detailed map can only be read by the royals and the military. Isu thinks, I hope there won't be a war here. I wouldn't like to live in this world, suffer the wrath and serve only the military people. Isu then asks the boy if war happens often there. The boy replies, it's not like that. Recently a wizard's family helped prevent war in our empire. Looking at the current situation, it seems unlikely that anyone would have the courage to attack our empire. Isu feels happy and thinks, it's good that I won't have to serve the military. Then the boy introduces himself and says his name is Hans. He is in charge of all tasks that require strength in the village. He says to Isu, if you're around my age, let's be friends. Isu tells him that he is 23 years old. Hans is shocked and says, do you use any drink or lotion to look young? I'm 17 years old. Isu is surprised to hear Hans's age. He didn't think Hans would be so young. Then both of them become friends. Isu asks Hans about the food he was eating. Hans says, this is bread with raspberries on it. First we cook the flatbread and leave it for a few days, then top it with different kinds of food. On this one I used crushed raspberries. Then Hans says to Isu, do you want to have a bite? Isu thinks, after seeing it, it doesn't look so tasty. Then Isu asks Hans, by the way, which is the nearest city around here? Hans replies, Pushing City is the closest, but it takes 3 days to reach there by car. Then which is the biggest city? Hans replies, Armenia City, but I've never been there. Some merchants come to our village and I've heard about it from them. It's the capital city of our empire. It takes more than a month to reach there by car. When Hans hears the sound of some people coming, he thinks the merchants have returned. He asks Isu, can you take care of the library at this time tomorrow? I need to go meet the merchants. Isu gets a little confused. Then Hans says that Isu can also get the things he needs from the library. Isu couldn't refuse. Both of them come outside, where we see some merchants. Isu feels very excited seeing them. He goes to say something to Hans but sees that Hans is already gone. Then we see Hans asking Aunt Maggie where the merchants went. Everyone is in a hurry. Hans wants to return home because he has to buy something and needs gold. After coming home he thinks he should take a shower. Then he thinks further, I cannot go from this world to the other world with anything. Going to another world wearing just underwear is a bit too much. It's strange, but what can I do? Then he thinks, yes, it's better to take my box of gold coins to the other world than to come and go again and again. That's why I need a subspace pocket. He goes to another place, takes 2 gold coins and heads out to meet the merchants. He goes to a restaurant where the merchants are going to stay. There are a lot of people there, which Isu finds very pleasant. He sees Aunt Maggie there. Aunt Maggie asks Isu, have you come to eat food? Well, you'll have to wait for it. Isu replies, no problem. Then Aunt Maggie says, I'll bring food for you in a while. Till then, drink this. Isu says, thank you, and starts thinking, If she gives me beer, how will it taste? I had beer before, will this one taste different? Then Ant serves him beer. Seeing it, he gets very surprised because he has been drinking this kind of beer for quite some time. He doesn't let even a single drop spill and drinks it completely. He finds the taste very delicious and drinks it again. Then Aunt Maggie comes over and says, "You'll have to give 1 silver and 5 copper coins in exchange for this drink." Isu gives her a gold coin. In return, he receives 8 silver coins and 5 copper coins as change. He thinks this means 10 silver coins are equal to 1 gold coin, so the cost of 1 cup of beer is around 15,000 won. Then he asks, "Do I have to pay separately for food as well?" Aunt Maggie says, "Don't worry, you've already paid for both. By the way, is the price of beer also cheaper in your city? Because here we get 1 cup of beer for 2 copper coins." She adds, "Well, now I'm going to prepare food for you." Isu says, "Till then, I'll enjoy this beer." He looks around. There are a lot of people, and he thinks he should go and talk to some of them. Then Hans comes, calling Isu. Hans says, "Have you also come here to eat?" Isu replies, "Would you like to join me?" Hans says, "No, I came to eat with my family. In our village, it's a rule to spend time with your family during meals. But my family gave me permission to go and meet the merchants. That's why I came here." That's when Isu gets to eat. This time the food was pork stew with bread. Isu thinks, "I also feel like eating with my parents." That's when Hans says, "Your food has come." Hans looks at the food and says, "This is usually eaten in winter, and now it's summer. But I'm sure it will still taste very good." After the meal, Hans says, "Let's go meet the merchants." Isu replies, "That's fine." Then he looks at the food and starts thinking, generally people keep pork like this for 2 days, but that can spoil it. That's why common people eat it as quickly as they can. Fresh pork juice and vegetable soup preparation tastes very delicious. At the same time, they've used essential herbs and salt, which gives it a unique taste. I remember this taste. My mother used to cook food like this. My mother used to make very spicy food, which I liked a lot earlier, but now I don't like spicy food. While thinking about all this, he remembers his mother a lot. When Isu is done eating, Hans asks him again, "Mr. Isu, what will you do now?" Isu says, "I'll go see the merchants." Hans gets excited and says, "Okay, let's go quickly." Then both of them go toward a small festival. Hans says, "You'll find a lot of things here." Aunt Maggie asks the price of a mirror. The shopkeeper says, 8 silver. Isu sees Aunt Maggie asking about the mirror and thinks, "I'm sure the one I tried to give her had better quality. Anyway, 8 silver is 80,000 won. If I were to sell 3 a day, 90 a month, I'd earn 7 million won a month. Awesome." Then Aunt Maggie asks for a cheaper mirror. The shopkeeper shows her a wizard's mirror for 3 silver coins. Aunt Maggie understands that this is a mirror made by a wizard. On the other side, Isu sees a man and thinks, "I've never seen this face before." The old man says to Isu, "Where did you come from?" Isu replies, "I am an adventurer from Korea. My name is Isu." The old man says, "It's my first time hearing such a name. It must be really far from here." Isu tells him, "It's a miracle that I came this far alive. By the way, how much does spice cost nowadays?" The old man replies, 6 gold per pound for black pepper, 6 gold for nutmeg, 1 gold for sugar, and salt is 2 copper. Isu thinks carefully. 1 pound is about 450 grams, so 1 kilogram of black pepper would be 12 gold. That's about 1.2 million won. That's awesome. Then he asks, "Is that standard followed everywhere in Armenia?" The old man replies, "Well, we can say that the prices are similar here and there." Hearing all this, Isu starts forming a detailed business plan in his mind. He thinks, considering the transportation fees, city taxes, and store rental fee, I think it's okay to sell it a little cheaper here. Judging by how they react, they must have increased the prices since they are dealing with innocent rural peasants. Anyway, spices are quite expensive here. If I just find a route to sell them, I might become the richest person in the Armenian Empire. If that happens, I'll be done with you, Manager Park. We see that the same girl starts watching Su from behind a tree. Isu starts asking the old man how much did it cost you to get the black pepper from the port. The old man replies, "Of course, I can't say that." Then Isu says, "Did I mention that black pepper is really cheap in the place I come from?" Isu gives an evil smile and continues, "If we talk about this further, I might be able to provide those at a reasonable price." The old man replies, "3 gold." Isu asks, "Where is that continent anyway?" He continues, "Since they come here and that reduces their burden of having to go to the big city, I think they will buy it for 2 gold coins, right? By the way, I'll ask other merchants too before deciding the exact price." Hearing these lines, the old man says, "So why don't you sell all the black pepper you have?" Isu starts looking at the man with suspicious eyes and says, "Looks like you're lacking in supplies, is that it?" The old man replies, "Of course I am. Every time this crop grows, the royal family and the elite people buy it. Because of that, ordinary people like us are not able to buy it even if we want to. That's why this time I could buy only 5 pounds of black pepper." Isu thinks, "I can understand why it's so expensive. It's brought from such a far distance. Even bringing 2 kilograms of black pepper from that far is a big deal." Then he says, "Forgive me, but for today I don't have anything." The old man gives him a card and says, "Take this." It was written on the card, "Spy Store, Colin Mug Wall, Central Market of Armenia City, Spice Street number 5. Then the old man says, "If a trade route opens to your continent, come to my store. And now, goodbye." In the next scene, Izu sees a kid sitting. He thinks he should go and talk to that kid. He goes to the kid and asks, "Hey kid, do you live here?" The kid says, "I'm not a kid. I'm 10 years old." Isu says, "Forgive me." Then the boy asks, "Where do you come from?" Isu replies, "From Korea." The kid says, "Liar, I've read 100 books but I've never heard of Korea. What are you talking about?" Isu says, "Do you know I'm 23 years old and I've read more than 1,000 books, yet there are still many things I don't know. And you think you know more than me?" The boy replies, "I'm the son of a general merchandiser. Mino strives. What about you?" Iso tells his name, to which the boy says, "That's a very intellectual name. By the way, since you've read thousands of books, are you rich? Because in this place thousands of books are equivalent to several 100 million won." Isu says, "Anyway, I have a question." The boy gets surprised and asks, "What do you want to ask me?" Then Isu gives him the same mirror and says, "Can you check this out? How much do you think this mirror would be worth?" The boy replies, "As long as it's sold officially, about 3 gold. Then Isu asks, "Sold officially?" The boy says, "With this quality I'm sure it's made with magic, but there isn't a seal that means this was made by an illegal wizard who wasn't approved by the royals." Then Iyasu asks, "So you mean it can't be sold? I guess I should just quietly sell it then." Eso says. The boy replies, "Yes, you can sell it on the black market. Noble families go crazy collecting unique things, so this would be an easy way out." We see that the boy likes the mirror very much. Aishu says, "Can you keep this?" The boy gets very shocked and says, "Really, I can keep this? But wait 1 second. Will you have any conditions in exchange? Because there is no such thing as free in this world." After that, Izu asks the boy, "Then let me ask a question. You came from Pussing, right? Aren't there any other villages around?" The boy replies, "There's a big village named Rin that's 2 hours away from here, but I like Laden more." Isu asks why. The boy says, "Because the people here aren't greedy and they also sell good quality hay at a cheap price, so the horses like it. And of course I can't forget the delicious food made by our Aunt Humphrey." Isu thinks in his mind, "It seems everybody loves Aunt Humphrey's food." Then Isu asks, "What about Armania City?" The boy says, "It's really a good place to live, it's just that the houses are really expensive." Izio asks, "Is it too expensive?" Then Ashu thinks, his words remind me of Seoul's prices. Then the boy tells him, "A hut in this village is 20 gold, that's about the price of a horse." "By the way, Mr. Izu, wait for a while. I want to give you something." The boy gives something to Izu and says, "This is our house. The first floor is a store. If you have any thoughts of working, you're always welcome." Isu asks, "So suddenly?" The boy says, looking at you, I can tell that you belong to a rich family, that's why I'm suggesting it, and it looks like you will be popular with women here, but of course you aren't my type. Then Isu replies, that's too bad, but you're not my type either. The boy laughs and says, I'll go back to my father now. While leaving, the boy tells him, if you get us another mirror I will sell it for you. Isu asks, you will? The boy says, yes, with this quality, if we put it in an auction it will be worth a lot. If you promise to supply us the most, we will give you the best rate. In the next scene, Su is back at his home and thinks, I want to go back again. He is feeling very hot, so he turns on the AC and thinks, when will this hot season end? I just want to live in Lawton, selling black pepper. Then he opens the fridge and takes out ice cream. He enjoys eating it and says, that soft ice cream inside this fluffy bread and the sweetness of the cookies and cream and the little cookie pieces embedded, it's giving a nice chewing texture. He becomes happy and finally decides that he will leave his job. Then he starts searching for the price of black pepper on the computer. He sees 1 kg of black pepper 101, which is very cheap. Then he thinks, if I were to sell it for 2 gold per pound, that means 4 gold per kilogram. I can get 4 million won for 10 kg. Thinking about all this, he becomes very happy and says, tomorrow I will go to the office and submit my resignation. In the next scene we see Izo going to his manager, Park. Manager Park tells him, I've told you a couple of times already, why are you changing the source code? You don't like it. Isu replies, distressed, but Manager Park shouts, shouldn't you be trying to find a more efficient way instead of just using open source? Isu hesitates and says, but that efficient source is where the error came from before. Then Izu starts thinking in his mind about all those things which require a lot of hard work as a programmer. Manager Park shouts again, hey, are you even listening to me? He drops some of the papers that Iyashu had worked on, then scolds him saying, are you thinking of using your dead parents as an excuse to zone out like that? Izu gets surprised and thinks to himself, is he really crazy? Then his manager continues, this is the problem with brats with weak mental health. They affect other innocent people too. Izu makes a decision, he will have to resign. In the next scene, he goes to someone's room. That guy asks him to sit politely. Isu says, I think I have to resign for some personal reasons. The guy asks, is this because of Manager Park? Isu tells him, till now, I've done everything they told me to do. I've heard every taunt and insult, but now they are saying terrible things about my parents. That's something I can't tolerate anymore. The boy replies, all of us are thinking of complaining against Manager Park. He continues, but the CEO is only listening to our complaints. He isn't able to do anything against Park, because very few people support us. That's the reality, and when it comes to Park's ability, he doesn't do a bad job. It's only because of that we haven't been able to fire him. Isu thinks, I could not even concentrate on my work while remembering. After what Manager Park had said, the man tells Ayo, I can understand. I kept you on the job because I knew your situation, but now things have worsened. I still understand where you're coming from. That's why I won't stop you from leaving. Even I don't know how long this company will survive, but I'm hopeful we'll get projects again. He adds, you are really a very good person. You should take care of yourself. Isu thinks to himself, if this dimension gate wasn't there, I would have had to give more years to Manager Park. Then he says to the man, thank you for understanding. I'd like to ask your permission to leave now. The man replies, okay. Coming out of the office, Ius thinks, I hope this company runs well even without me. Even if I go away, I believe the people who remain will take care of it. As for Manager Park, well, now I have nothing to do with him. In the next scene we see Asu preparing to go to another world with both black pepper and sugar to start a business. He says to himself, I had 41,000 won in my bank, and I had 100,000 won in cash. Together that makes 41,000 won, which I used to buy black pepper and sugar. He continues thinking, now I feel scared to try new things, but I can do anything, and nobody can stop me now. He travels to another world, and after looking at his room he says, this place is really comfortable. I even made a secret space to store the black pepper and sugar. It's under my bed. Then we see him visiting Aunt Humphrey's house. Aunt Humphrey thinks he has come to eat food, but he says he has something to show her, and also something to give her. Aunt asks, "What is this?" Isu replies, "These are barley flour, apricot seed flour, and honey. I'm going to make something called a mask pack. We'll mix the ingredients and apply them to our faces." Aunt asks, "All that on our face?" Isu says, "Yes, it will lighten blemishes and give our skin elasticity." The aunt feels a bit weird and says, "But I don't feel like putting food on my face." Isu happily replies, "This is how women in our continent take care of their skin. Try it once." Aunt agrees and wears the face mask, which looks very strange. Aunt Maggie didn't leave any gaps while applying the mask. Seeing this, Isu starts laughing and says, "Aunt, you should have left space around your eyes and nose." Aunt thanks him, and Isu says, "It's nothing." In the next scene, he returns to his room and says happily, "I like this freedom very much." This is how he starts to heal and how he spends his days in Seal City. Then there is a knock on his door. Isu opens it and sees Hans. Hans says, "I haven't seen you in a while, so I thought maybe you had left." Isu replies, No. Hans says, "Can you spare some time? Would you like to join me in picking hops?" Isu asks, "Hops, what's that?" Hans replies, "It's used in making beer. I make it myself. Anyway, how long are you planning to stay here?" Isu says, "I'm not sure. I'm going to talk to the village chief first." Hans says, "He'll be happy if you decide to stay for a long time. We always need manpower." He continues, "There's a lot to do: harvesting hay, feeding animals, fetching water, making beer, grinding grains, and I also have to protect the library." Then as Siu asks Hans, "Recently I saw a blonde-haired girl. Who is she?" Hans looks surprised and says, "Blonde hair? There's no such girl in our village. There's only one girl here, but she's a little weird." Isu asks, "Weird? How?" Hans explains, "It's been 10 years since she came here. She lives with her mother, but they don't interact much with the neighbors." Isu says, "Really?" Hans continues, "But they do everything they're asked to do. People have to work if they want to stay in the village after all." Isu asks, "Is that why you want me to go with you to pick hops?" Hans laughs and says, "That's not the only reason. If we think about it carefully, we realize that after taxes, most of our earnings are spent quickly. That's why when merchants come, they manage everything: rent, collection, supplies, and more." Isu comments, "So do you consider them your wallet?" Hans starts laughing. Then Isu thinks, the kid was right. Villagers here only make enough to get by. They'll take whatever you offer without bargaining. It's hard to imagine that in our modern society. I guess this is what it means to live like flowing water. It's good. Both of them arrive at the place they were heading to. Hen shows Isu a sample fruit and says, "You have to collect fruits that look like this." Isu takes one, smells it, and thinks, "It smells good, like a mixture of grass and fruit." Then he says, "I heard that beer in a world without hops tastes awful. It's fortunate there's hops here." Lost in thought, Hans calls him Mr. Isu. "What are you doing?" Isu says, "Nothing. I was just thinking about something. I just need to put this in the basket, right?" Hans says, "Yes." Then we see them collecting the hops together. A lot of fruit was filling the baskets. Hans said, "This is enough." Isu replied, "It finished earlier than I imagined." Then Hans said, "Let's go now." On the way home, Hans told Isu, "The firewood is running out. Can you come tomorrow as well? We have to shave the sheep before it gets hotter." "Do you know how?" Isu didn't say anything. Then Hans said, "I'll take this to the inn. By the way, you must be tired. Take some rest for a while." Isu said, "Okay, thanks," and then started running towards his home. He went home and took a bath, which made him feel really good. Then he thought to himself, a beer would be perfect after a nice shower. If I'm going to drink beer in another world, I should take some food there. He started thinking about a lot of food and said to himself, "I feel like eating all this." He began browsing food on his phone and planned to take some of it to the other world. After much thought, he picked a food item and ordered it online. After some time, the delivery arrived. He decided to take the food to the other world using his subspace pocket. He thought it'll be great to enjoy the taste of Korea in another world. After reaching the other world, he thought, but how can I eat this food? There's not even a plastic bowl here. If I think about it, I haven't brought any of my essential things here. So he went back and brought some bowls from Korea. At this moment, Hans arrived. Hans said, after coming inside, I was knocking at the door for a long time, but I couldn't hear anyone's voice. Isu, who was without clothes, was stunned to see Hans. Hans said, sorry, I came in without permission. Next time, I'll wait outside. Isu said, okay. Then both of them went to the garden and started talking. Hans said, I've been working hard to cover your quota while you weren't here. Isu asked, work? Hans replied, the hops we picked earlier. We had to clean the dust off the fruits to make beer. Since you weren't here, I did all of that myself. Isu was very surprised and said, thanks. He thought to himself, this place is nothing like Seal, but it's much better. Then he thanked Hans again and said, I'll help next time. By the way, why are you here again? And said, do you want to have dinner with me? Isu remembered the food he had planned to eat, the one he ordered and brought into this world. He wasn't sure what would happen to it, but still said yes to Hans. Seeing Isu's expression, Hans said, if you're saying yes, then why are you making that face? Isu said, no, it's not that I don't like it, it's just sudden. I actually cooked something. Hans was surprised and said, you know how to cook? Isu said, yes, but why do you sound so surprised? Hans said, nothing. You just seem like someone who only eats food cooked by others. Isu said, I was planning to share it with Aunt Humphrey. Then Hans said, let's eat at Aunt Humphrey's then. Isu asked, can we do that? Hans replied, of course, I'll get permission from my parents first. Don't start eating until I get there. Isu said, then I guess I'll use a wooden bowl. In the next scene, we see that Isu has prepared a delicious meal. Everyone is asking, what is this? Ya said, it's called roasted chicken. It's made by boiling chicken with different vegetables. Aunt Humphrey asked, lime stew? Isu replied, yes, it's similar. Eat it before it gets cold. After everyone had eaten their share, they started reacting so strangely that Isu became extremely nervous. Isu asked Hans, you don't like it, is it not to your taste? Hans said, this food, it just flipped my whole world. Isu said, what? Aunt Humphrey turned to her husband and asked, are you all right? Her husband replied, I lost consciousness because it was so delicious. Then Aunt Humphrey asked Isu, did you use spices in this food? Isu thought to himself, Aunt Humphrey is really experienced in cooking. That's why she noticed so quickly that I spiced up the food. Then he said aloud, yes, it's a common spice used in my hometown. Aunt Humphrey asked, is it not your type, Hans? Hans shouted, it's completely my type. Aunt Humphrey's husband said, it's my type too. Then Aunt Humphrey said to everyone, start eating now. Everyone enjoyed the meal very much. The next morning Isu said, all right, let's go sell some black pepper. While he was searching for a merchant, he saw a girl riding a horse. Isu thought to himself, she is very beautiful. He noticed people around her and wondered, is she a noble? Seeing a man standing next to her, Isu thought, how cool does this guy look? Suddenly the girl looked at Isu excitedly and said, my love. Isu thought nervously, loving me, this is the first time I'm hearing something like this. The girl got down from the horse and started walking toward him. But then we see she walks right past Isu and goes to Aunt Maggie, who is standing behind him. We find out the girl's name is Rose. Rose said to Aunt Maggie, how long have you been working here? You're the reason I keep sneaking out of the house. Aunt Maggie replied, then I'll have to leave this place now. Rose said, what? I might die if I don't eat the food you cook for me every day. Rose rudely says, I'll tell you this again. I like to live my life freely, and if I had made up my mind, I would have been the best chef in the royal family in no time. Then Rose adds in horror, if you refuse to make my food, I'll cut off that hand and take it with me. Isu thinks to himself, how scary she is. Aunt Humphrey says, then you can't eat the food I make anymore. Rose says to her, that means hurry up and give me the most delicious food. I brought the ingredients, so use them as much as you want. Aunt Humphrey replies, okay. Now go and wash up first. The girl runs off to freshen up. Before leaving, she says, if you add black pepper, I'm not going to let you go. Aunt Humphrey says, that's not possible. Isu thinks to himself, so she hates black pepper. Hans says to Isu, Miss JJ is so beautiful, right? Isu replies, yeah. Hans adds, of course she's a bit bad-tempered. Hans is about to say more when Rose suddenly arrives and says, bad-tempered? But who? Seeing Rose up close makes Hans's heart skip a beat. Rose says, don't be scared. It's all good. I was furious when that rumor about my bad temper started spreading, but now it's too late to take it back. I bet my driver played a huge role in spreading that rumor. It's a really cunning one. Then pointing at Isu, she says, by the way, who's this person? Isu replies, let me introduce myself. I'm an adventurer, Isu from Korea. Hans adds, he'll be staying in the village for a while. Rose starts asking a lot of questions all at once. What is this Korea? It's my first time hearing of it. It must be far away from here. Which family are you from? How much wealth do you have? Hearing so many questions at once, Iozi's head starts spinning. Just then the same man from before arrives and takes Miss Rose away. Rose shouts, hey, let go of me, let me go. Isu looks at the girl and thinks, what a crazy young girl. Then Isu asks Hans, her name is Jace Rose. Hans replies, yes, you can call her Miss JJ for short. Isu says, I see, Miss JJ must be very interested in me. Isu pokes Hans and asks, do you like Miss JJ? Hans replies, what are you saying? It's not like that. He continues, Mrs. Humphrey's food is really good. Even if I use the same recipe and ingredients, it doesn't taste as good as hers. Just then, a swan becomes very happy after seeing a man and says, Mr. Joseph, I am here. The man named Joseph replies, all right, Hans, get me a beer. Hans brings the beer. Isu asks the beer's price and Hans says, we don't charge money today, it's Miss JJ's day, after all. Uncle Joseph says to Isu, since we're here, let's have a drink together. Isu replies, yeah, of course. By the way, I heard him call you Mr. Joseph, and I'm Isu, sir. If you don't mind, may I ask what kind of business you do? Uncle Joseph replies, I sell spices in Hermania City. Isu asks, by any chance, do you know Mr. Mugo? Uncle Joseph says, you mean Colin Mugo? Of course I know him. We are very close. Isu asks, how do you know him? He came here last week. Uncle Joseph asks, did he perhaps sell some black pepper here? Isu replies, yes, but he said he only got a little of it. Uncle Joseph exclaims, come on. Isu, confused, asks, any problem? Then Uncle Joseph says, I'm the owner of the biggest spice shop in Hermania. I couldn't even get a grain of black pepper because the Meditz family swept it all up. No wonder the Meditz bathe in pepper water. There's even a rumor they use pepper as perfume. Isu thinks, that sounds like the other way around. Uncle Joseph then asks, that man Mugo, how did he even get a little bit of black pepper? Isu thinks, come to think of it, wasn't that what Hans ate before? It wasn't that good back then, would it be any better with beer? While thinking, he starts eating something very hard and doesn't like it at all. Isu says to Uncle Joseph, I don't think Miss JJ actually likes black pepper though. Uncle Joseph says, don't even say that. There's big trouble in Pising because of that. Isu asks Uncle Joseph, were you planning to set fire to the carriage carrying black pepper? Uncle Joseph replies, it was pretty hard to distract the knights. Isu says, wow. Just then Rose returns and says to both of them, don't you both think you shouldn't talk about me behind my back? Isu suddenly gets scared. Uncle Joseph says to Rose, of course not. Come, have a seat. Have a drink too. Rose tells Uncle Joseph, how about we steal that carriage? We'll earn a lot if we succeed. Then she picks up Iosi's beer and drinks it. Rose asks Isu, do you want this beer back? Isu replies, I don't want it. Rose asks Isu to answer the question she had asked earlier. Isu says, my father was a scholar and my mother was just a regular housewife. I was traveling after graduating from an academy. Rose says, that must be why you look rich. So since you enrolled in an academy, you aren't just a commoner, right, sir? Rose suddenly changes her tone toward Isu. Isu responds, in our continent, even commoners can enroll in an academy. Rose asks, really? Isu replies, yes. Then Rose asks, what about women? Isu replies, women can enroll too. After that, Rose says, then we'll run away to that continent right now. Her bodyguard interrupts, don't even dream about it, miss. Then Maggie brings food, which makes Rose very happy. Rose is about to eat the food when her bodyguard stops her and says, I can't let you eat something that looks suspicious. I've never seen this type of food before. Rose says, then should I starve? You really want that, don't you? Then she begins to eat silently. She enjoys the food so much that she feels like she's in heaven. Maggie says, I'll explain about the food. Rose suddenly interrupts. Wait, I'll explain. The soup has the taste of soft cream, a mix of veggies, butter, and milk all together. The texture of the barley popping in my mouth feels so refreshing. The scent of truffle mushroom is added, making it luxurious. In this it's a food called potato. It's my first time trying it. It's somehow crumbly yet soft and tasty. Isu is very surprised to see Rose's refined sense of taste. Rose says, of course it was magic. I spent some money on some wizard bastards. I did well, right? Uncle Joseph says, yes, you did really well. Isu thinks to himself, it looks like she isn't really fond of wizards. I wonder how the soup tastes. It's like clam chowder, delicious. But it wouldn't have been easy to harmonize the taste of potatoes and clams. She made this with ingredients she had never even seen before. She's great. Rose snaps, don't overreact and sit down. I only said that because it was so delicious. Then she looks at something and asks, what is that? Humphrey answers, cabbage. It's pickled in boiling water with lemon juice, raspberry juice, and bay leaves. I also added sugar to give you when you arrived. Rose gets very excited and says, I love you, Maggie. Everyone will suspect me if I kidnap Maggie, right? Her bodyguard says, if you want, I can kidnap her for you. Rose says, hey, don't say that out loud. In the next scene, Isu says, now that we're full, let's go sell some black pepper. He steps outside and admires the night view, thinking, it's definitely different from Seoul's sky. He goes to Uncle Joseph's house to sell the black pepper. Uncle Joseph is very surprised to see so much of it. Uncle Joseph asks, how did you get that? Isu replies, I bought it from my hometown. Uncle Joseph says, I'll buy them all. Isu says, I have about 20 malems. Uncle Joseph offers, I'll give you 3 gold coins per pound. Isu thinks to himself, that's a total of 60 golds. That means 6 million won in cash. He is very shocked. Uncle Joseph gives him the money. Isu says, isn't it uncomfortable to carry such a huge amount of cash? Uncle Joseph replies, that's why we hire merchants. We were just lucky this time that we met Miss JJ and her people along the way. No bandits are stupid enough to attack people accompanying the Midit's family. The next morning, Isu wakes up feeling much better. He says, so this is what rich people wake up to, but it feels kind of awkward having this much money. He thinks people here normally use just 3 gold a month to live. How much should I spend? Thinking about it, he starts looking at his wallet. Then he decides, shall I go have a look at the market first? He heads to the market and goes to the candle shop. He asks the price of candles. The merchant says, oil candles are 5 copper per pound, and wax candles are 2 silver coins. Isu says, give me 4 palelbs of oil candles. Then a girl enters. Seeing her, AC remembers she used to live next to his house. The girl has come to buy fish. The shopkeeper says, that's an expensive fish. It requires magic to catch, so we only get it if someone places an order. The girl says, then I would like to order some. The shopkeeper says, you need to pay 5 silver in advance. It'll take about 2 months to arrive. Is that okay? Isu is shocked and thinks, 500,000 won for some fish. The girl says, then just give me 1 cooked red herring. The shopkeeper replies, the total is 2 copper. The girl says, wait, I'll go get a container. Isu thinks to himself, I guess I was wrong about her being a spoiled blonde. In the next scene, Rose comes to the market and starts calling for Isu. Isu says, Miss JJ, did you come here to buy something? Rose replies, I was looking for you. Yaja seems surprised. Then Rose asks nervously, would you go on a walk with me? Isu says, okay. During the walk, Rose asks, I heard you sold black pepper to Joseph. Isu responds nervously, did Mr. Joseph say that? He thinks to himself, it would have been better to keep that a secret, tough luck. Rose says, no, I just met him this morning, and I could smell it. Isu thinks, smelled it. I guess we can say she's very sensitive to black pepper. Isu says, actually I really like black pepper. I bought some from my hometown and sold it here to get some money for transportation. Rose replies, I don't understand why people are crazy for such a thing. Isu wonders, is it because she's just sick of it, or does she really hate it? Then Asuru says, but I like it. It's really delicious when used on ramen, when black pepper is sprinkled as a topping on spicy and sweet ramen soup. Rose asks, are you eating something? Isu replies, no, it's nothing. Maybe the reason you hate it is because some guy just uses it excessively. Rose answers, it's not that kind of problem. I don't care about that. It just makes me sick when I even smell it. Rose gets very angry, and everyone nearby asks her to calm down. She then says, sorry, I've just been a bit on edge lately. Isu says, it's all right. Then Rose says to Aishu, you're also some kind of noble, right? Traveling around while hiding your true identity. My eldest brother is also traveling to gain experience. Isu asks, so did you say you wanted to study? Rose replies, no, I want to inherit my family's business. Even if you can't inherit their business, can't you at least get a store in the capital if you talk to your father? Isu asks. Rose replies, no, it won't work. My father is planning to marry me into a wizard family. You know, wizards are descendants of elves, and people serve elves like gods. Even the families who marry into wizard families are praised, as if they were chosen by the gods. For that honor, he's going to marry me off to a wizard family. Isu says, it must be hard for you to face an arranged marriage. Then Rose says, so take me to your continent. I can offer you 5,000 golds. Isu responds, I understand how you feel, but would you be all right in a foreign land with no family members? Isu gets emotional and says, one day I suddenly lost my parents and got lost. That saying time heals everything was a lie. The more time passed, the more I missed the days I spent with my parents. Rose says, it looks like your parents were good people. Isu replies, yes. Then Rose says, actually my parents are good people too. It's just that it made me realize they're ultimately like all the others. She continues, it's not important to them whether there's something I like or hate. They just want me to live up to the standards adults made. Then Rose adds, well, my house is about 4 days away from here, so you can visit sometime. Isu says, okay. After I get used to this place. Rose says jokingly, it would be better if you kidnapped Maggie too on your way there. Isu replies, I guess I should rather not go then. Rose says again, I will give you 5,000 golds. Isu jokes, wouldn't it be better to give that to Humphrey instead? After the conversation ends, Rose leaves. Then Iyasu sees an old man and goes to talk to him. The man already knows Iyasu's name. He asks, are you going to stay in this village? Isu replies, so you knew me, I should have visited you first. Sorry I'm late. The man is actually the head of the village. The old man says, it's okay, go ahead with your plans. We're already like neighbors now. Isu says, okay. That's it. So can I just live here? Isu is very surprised by how easily the village accepts him. In the next scene we see a car arriving in the village. Maggie shouts, old men. She gets angry and says, where the hell have you been? Oh my god, you got a kid now? We then see some people arriving bringing a baby with them. Maggie asks the lady, is the baby healthy? The lady replies, yes, he's a perfectly healthy boy. Maggie gets emotional seeing the baby. We come to know that the woman is Maggie's daughter-in-law and the baby is her grandson. Isu feels very happy witnessing the moment. In the next scene, Hans comes to Isu's house. Isu says, "What is it? Do you need more firewood?" Hans says, "No, let's go see the baby." Both of them go to see the baby and think that he's very cute. Then Hans says, "Mr. Isu, I need to tell you something." Isu asks, "What is it?" Hans says, "A noble is trying to buy our village." Isu asks, "Seriously, what do you mean by that?" Hans says, "I mean our village could be sold at any moment now." Isu says, "What? Isn't that a serious problem?" Just then, the baby starts laughing. Seeing this, Isu says, "Well, maybe it's not as important as this moment." Hans says, "I guess so." In the next scene, Isu brings Hans to a different place and asks him, "By the way, that thing you mentioned earlier, isn't that a serious problem?" Hans asks, "What? Which one?" Isu says, "The thing you told me about the noble." Hans says, That, actually it doesn't have much to do with you. You're a traveler. You can leave at any time." Isu thinking to himself, that kind of hurt. Hans continues, "Anyway, there's something I wanted to give you." He hands over some books and says, "This one is about one of the nobles I like. It can help you better understand this place." Isu replies, "Thank you." In the next scene, Isu returns to Korea using the gate. Looking at his budget, he begins thinking about what he can sell this time. He remembers the girl in the market who was buying fish. Later that night, he goes to the market to buy something. He sees a lot of food and ends up eating to his heart's content. Then he thinks, let's take a walk to digest all this food. While walking, he reaches the fish market. Seeing so many fish makes him very happy. He spots a fish that looks just like the one the girl was buying. The shopkeeper asks, "Do you need some mackerel fish?" Isu replies, "Yes, but please remove the organs." The shopkeeper says, "Okay." Isu buys a lot of that fish, takes them home and thinks, it's been a while since I had proper mackerel. He also finds a sauce called samjang. Isu says, they don't have samjang sauce there, so let's make something tasty using samjang. He continues thinking, I learned this when I was studying abroad, and lastly, if I mix in some nuts, then it's done. He collects all the ingredients to eat the fish and says, I took some barley just in case, because porridge is more common than rice in that place. Then Eo remembers what his mother once said. Controlling fire is essential when cooking rice in a pot. You should fry the outer layer when frying fish so that the oil comes out, which prevents the fish from sticking to the pan. Won-soo gets a little emotional remembering his mother's words. In the next scene, he goes to the house of his neighbor. The girl's mother opens the door and asks, "Who is it?" Isu says, "I'm Iyasu living next door." The girl's mom replies, "Hi, I am Mesa, but what brought you here then?" Isu says, "I just realized that I didn't introduce myself properly, so I decided to treat you to a meal." Then the girl comes and asks her mother, "What happened, mother?" Her mother replies, "Mr. Aishu just moved into the house next door." She then tells Isu, "This is my daughter. Her name is Hyen." Both mother and daughter are quite surprised that Ieyasu is suddenly asking her to join him for a meal. Izu says, "I saw your daughter in the market looking for some mackerel fish, so I went to the neighboring village and bought some. I remembered that if it's all right with you, may I cook it?" That girl's mother says, "Sure. I wonder how it tastes." Isu says, "I hope it will suit your taste." "Okay then, let's eat in my backyard." Later in the next scene we see him cooking fish with great fun. He thinks I should fry the fish like this to make it crispy on the outside but soft on the inside. He's done cooking the fish, which looks very tasty. The three of them sit together to eat. Isu says this is steamed cabbage, but take a piece of mackerel fish along with some sauce on it, then wrap it and eat it. That girl's mother asks Is, "Did you live in a coastal village before coming here?" Isu replies, "Well, somehow, yes." Her mother eats the fish and after finishing, she says, "You have a talent for cooking, especially this sauce. It's my first time tasting something like this. It's really delicious." Isu feels very happy to hear the compliment and says, "I'm glad that you liked it. Now I want to try too." He finds it so tasty after eating it. He thinks I am in the ocean. He also thinks his mind about the cabbage's sweetness and the barley's texture suits well, but still, this part of the fish is the most delicious one. That girl's mother says, people who know how to eat should start eating from here. By the way, you should throw away the bones. Why would you eat those? Isu thinks. Somehow they don't seem like any ordinary mother and daughter. After eating, the girl says to Isu, thanks for the meal. I will clean the dishes and return them later. Isu says, it's okay, I will do that. That girl's mother says, let her be. She just wants to repay you somehow. Then she holds Isu's hand and says, thank you so much, I will treat you to a meal someday too. Isu says, okay, call me anytime. A scene of a few days later is shown. Isu thinks, it's been a month. He further thinks, I get very tired doing all that work with Hans. Just then, Hans arrives. Isu thinks that Hans has come to call him to do that work again. Isu asks in a very weary tone, what are we going to do today? Hans says, it isn't for work. Would you like to go to Lushan village with me? He is surprised to hear the name of the new village, but then he says, yes. Hans becomes very happy. In the next scene, Isu starts vomiting profusely due to traveling on such a dangerous road. He thinks, I should have taken meds for motion sickness. That was one murderous road. Then Hans says, there is someone I have to meet, so I will go that way. Isu says, okay, let's meet at this spot after about an hour. I will be at the pub if it gets too late. Hans replies, okay. Then he goes to meet someone. Isu thinks that he can take advantage of this opportunity to do some shopping in this village. Then Yu goes to a fabric shop and asks the shopkeeper, what kind of fabric is this? The shopkeeper says, you are really observant. This is a new kind of fabric called cambric. It's commonly used for handkerchiefs, curtains, and clothes. These are pretty popular among the nobles. Isu says, it's really soft, by the way, how much for it? The shopkeeper says, 1 gold each. Isu says, okay, then give me 2 of those. The shopkeeper asks, anyway, where are you going to use these? Isu says, baby diapers. The shopkeeper is very surprised. In the next scene, Isu is about to go to another place when he sees a swordsman holding a heavy sword. Machiu thinks to himself, I want to try raising that sword. The way the swordsman looks at Aishu makes him scared. Then he sees Miss JJ going by. Miss JJ also sees him. Miss JJ asks Iu, what are you doing here? Isu says, I followed Hans here. By the way, were you just passing by this place, right? Rose says, it's not that, I came out to observe. Haven't you heard the news? Isu asks, what news? Rose says, the new noble bought this land. They will be neighbors of my family. That's why I came here to observe. Anyway, what are you bringing around the town like that? Isn't that the cambric cloth? Isu says, yes, and Humphrey got a grandson, so I wanted to give her a gift. Rose gets shocked after hearing this news and says, what? Then I won't sit still either. She asks Isu to follow her. Then both of them go to a shop where Rose shows him soap and many other things. She says, I would like to give her more, but then Maggie will refuse to accept it, or tell her that I will visit soon and that I would like to congratulate her. Isu says, I will, and if you hear any important news about the village, please tell me. Then Rose says, the people in Loden must be worried too, aren't they? If the new nobles buy the land in that village too, I have to get Maggie out before that happens. Oja thinks, her eyes don't seem normal. Then she says, you think I am obsessed, right? Whatever, this can't be helped. Then she calls the waiter to give her a special meal. Izu thinks, in his mind, a special meal? Rose says, normally every inn has a special meal for the nobles. Their special meal arrives. Isu doesn't like it. The food was not good at all. Rose says, try it. Isu says, thanks for the meal, then he eats the food. After eating it he feels like vomiting because the taste was too bad. Raya says smilingly, what do you think? Isn't it tasty? Try the bread too. Then he comes home with Hans. In the next scene, he is just thinking about the food and says, it's really killing me. Now I understand why Miss JJ is obsessed with Aunt Humphrey. I know that Aunt Humphrey shouldn't leave Lodan no matter what. In the next scene we see Isu returning to Seal City with the help of the gate. He hurriedly opens the freezer and thinks, I am sure there is some plum syrup in there. He gets a lot of relief after having a few drinks. After that he says, something chilly and fresh is the best when feeling full. Now I feel better. Then he thinks while looking at the laptop. Anyway, is there anything else I can sell other than black pepper? I'm kind of getting sick of selling black pepper. Even the subspace pocket is a waste to only use for black pepper. Then something comes to his mind and he starts searching for something. Then we see a scene, a few days later. Yesu's trying to grow some crops by digging the soil. He thinks, there are other things I can do instead of selling things. If I grow these myself, my stock would be much more than the quantity I can bring from Korea. Then Hans comes there and asks, Mr. Isu, what are you doing? Isu says, I just wanted to plant something. Hans asks, what are you planting? Isu says, do you remember the soup Aunt Humphrey cooked when Miss JJ came? The veggies in there that's called potato, and I am planting those. Isu continues, it's easy to cook, quite delicious, and has a lot of uses. Hans says, okay, so invite me too someday. Isu says, sure, I will cook you some food called potato jian. Hans asks, potato jian? Isu says, yes, it's made by grinding some potatoes and deep frying it like a pancake on a frying pan. Hans says, that's a promise. Okay, Isu says, I will keep my promise as long as these grow well. After that, Hans says, by the way, the merchants have arrived, let's go together. Isu says, okay. In the next scene we see the same kid to whom Isu gave the mirror. His name is Mino. Isu recognizes him, and Mino is very happy to see him because Isu remembered him even after so long. Then Mino says, the mirror was sold for 5 golds. Do you perhaps have more of those? Isu says, I have about 5 more. Then Mino says, I will take it later, and goes away from there. Then Isu thinks, if Aunt Humphrey has made sausages today, I am wondering how tasty it will be to eat. I want to eat too. Just then Hans comes there and gives some food to Isu and asks him to eat it. Isu looks at the food and thinks it looks similar to salami. Then he eats the food, which makes him feel very salty. Hans asks, don't you like it? Isu says nervously, it's a bit salty, but I think it would be better if I ate this alongside some other food. Hans says, we have no choice since it has to be preserved for a long time. It will go bad quickly if we don't use at least that much salt. Then Aunt Humphrey comes in with some food. She says to Hans over there, stop talking and help me serve the food. Hans says, okay. Isu, looking at the food, sees there are only sausages and bread for today. Then he thinks, I am sure it will taste good since Aunt Humphrey made this. Then he sees some people sitting in front of him eating food. At the same time, Hans calls him, who is at the dining table with his family. Hans invites him to have dinner with his family. Hans's family also happily invites Isu. Hans's father says to Isu, I have heard a lot about you. Then everyone says, thanks for the meal. Isu eats the food and thinks it still tastes alright when I eat this with bread. The scent of the fermented meat and this chewy texture is this similar to salami too. Then while eating, he starts thinking about food in his mind. Then he asks, anyway, I don't see Miss Mesa and Hyen. Hans's mother says, I heard that Mesa isn't feeling well nowadays. Isu was shocked. Then Hans's mother gives some food to Isu, and says, can you take the leftover food to your place? Isu says, of course. Then when he starts leaving from there, he hears a lot of shouting and fighting. When Isu hears the voice, he understands that it is the voice of Hyen and her mother fighting. Then Hyen comes out of the room in anger. She and Isu come face to face, but Hyen doesn't say anything and goes away in anger. It is then that the mother comes out to call her, and then they start coughing up a lot of blood. In the next scene, we see Isu and the girl's mother at the dining table. Isu says, please eat before the food gets cold. The girl's mom replies, I will eat together with Hyen when she comes back. We see that she is very worried about her daughter. Then she says that Hyen isn't her real daughter, she is her nanny, who's been looking after her ever since she was young. Isu thinks to himself, so that's why I felt weird that time. I think there is a problem with her attitude too. The girl's nanny says, well, young miss doesn't have a warm attitude, but she isn't a bad child either. There's a valid reason why she shouted at me like that. Isu asks, is it somehow related to why you told the whole village that she's your daughter? The nanny replies, because we've kept this a secret. Our miss has a lot of talents. She wants to use those talents to earn money in a big city and get me treated, but I'm not allowing her. She's crazy. Isu thinks to himself, I also understand Hyen. Even I would have felt frustrated if someone important to me didn't want to get treated for an illness. Then the nanny says to Isu that she has a favor to ask. Isu asks, what is it? The nanny says, when I die, please help our Miss Hyen to settle down in this place. The next day we see Isu going to his parents' graves. After getting there, he repeats in his mind what the girl's nanny told him. After that he says aloud, it won't be easy, but I'll try. Then he remembers something his own nanny once said. That's a lot more convincing to hear than you confidently telling me that you would definitely do it just to keep me happy. In the next scene, Iyasu thinks to himself, I am not someone who is good enough to be responsible for a girl that I barely even know. And it doesn't feel like Hyen is someone with whom I can get along well. But the reason why I said that was because I know the feeling of being left alone. In the following scene, we see Mino and Isu. Isu gives him the remaining 5 mirrors, which makes Mino very happy. Mino says, okay, I'll give you 3 golds per mirror, and I'll give you more if these get sold at a higher price. Isu says, you work with your conscience, huh? Then Isu asks, what about soap instead of mirrors? Mino replies, soaps aren't in as much demand as mirrors. Mino continues, anyway, Mr. Isu, what are you? Isu, surprised, says, I said I'm an adventurer. Mino says, what I mean is, are you a noble or a commoner? You have a scent that I can only smell from nobles. Commoners can't take a shower as frequently because water is rare. Isu asks, then how do the people in Armenia take a bath? Mino replies, there are several public baths that the wizard's family runs. Even the commoners use them because the price is affordable. Isu asks, the wizard's family? Mino says yes, Armenia doesn't have much water, so they gather weather with magic. Isu thinks to himself, then this country is so bad that they can't even survive without the wizards. In the next scene we see Hyen sitting next to her nanny. Her nanny says, Miss, sorry for not being able to be with you till the end. Hyen replies, you've been protecting me for 30 years. You did your best and you've done enough, so you don't have to cry. Leave peacefully. The nanny's health deteriorates. Everyone understands that she will not live much longer. It is time for her to leave. The nanny starts crying a lot, then she dies. Isu thinks to himself, Hyen eventually didn't even cry during Nanny's funeral. He visited her house to share some food, but he only saw the empty dishes in front of the house, not her. The next day, Isu returns to his home in Sea City. He goes to a cake shop and remembers a scene of his parents. His mother was eating bread. Isu had asked, are you eating bread again? His mother replied, I can live without rice, but I can't live without bread. His father joked, do you love bread more than me? His mother started thinking seriously, which made his father worried. We see that Asu's family was very happy back then. Back in the present, Isu buys the same bread. Then he goes to another world and starts eating his mother's favorite bread. He sees a packet on the table. At first he doesn't remember what it contains, but then suddenly, he remembers it's the same fabric, soap and lotion that he and Rose had bought for Maggie's grandchild. He sets out to give it to Maggie. Maggie asks, what is that? Isu says, Cambry cloth, and I also put soap and lotion from Miss J in here. It's a gift for getting a grandchild. Maggie says, oh my, you are so thoughtful. Isu says, it's nothing much. Then Maggie says, compared to you, the males in my family are so lazy. Isu gets nervous and says, I'll see you later. He thinks to himself, I better get out of here for the sake of peace in this family. Then he goes to see the crop he had grown long ago. He sees Hyan there and is very surprised. He says, "It's been a while. Were you looking at the potato flower?" Then he plucks a flower and gives it to her. He says, "How is it? It's simple but beautiful, right?" Hyan looks at him with a strange expression and says, "Why did you pluck that flower?" Isu says nervously, "You should pluck the flower for the potato to grow well." Hyan asks, "What is a potato?" Isu replies, "Something you eat. It's buried under the ground. Right now, we can harvest it after a month. I'll let you taste it." Hyan says, "Forget it." Isu thinks to himself, "Anyway, is she eating properly? Looks like she lost some weight." Then Isu asks Hyan, "Do you perhaps like bread?" Hyan asks, "Breaded?" Isu says, "Yes, I got some of it recently. I like bread." Hyan gets excited. She says, "Come on in then. Let's eat together." Then she eats the bread and Iu thinks, "Looks like she loves bread too. But I was wondering why her hair color altered so frequently, so she was indeed a witch." While thinking this, Iu starts looking at her carefully. At that time, Hyan asks, "Is it your first time seeing someone eating bread?" Isu gets nervous again and says, "No, I was just amazed by your ears." Hyan says, "You could have just asked if I'm a witch." Isu replies, "How could I when you were trying to hide it?" Hyan says, Yeah. Anyway, you better not tell this to anybody else. And don't talk to me when I'm eating." Isu is surprised by her behavior and says, "Okay." After finishing the food, Hyon says, "I get it now. You can fool the others but not me." Mitsu doesn't understand what she means. Then Hyan asks, "You aren't an ordinary person, right?" Isu, sounding very nervous, replies, "What do you mean?" Then he thinks, "Did she somehow notice that I came from another dimension?" Then Hyan says, "You're a wizard, a bread wizard." Isu is absolutely stunned by her words. Then Hyan says, "The texture is soft but not greasy. The egg and butter give a good taste to the bread and the scent spreads all over my mouth. Unless you are a bread wizard, it's not possible for someone to make such delicious bread." Then she adds, "You fed me such delicious bread. In return, I'll help you take care of the potato flowers." Isu says, Sure. Then Hyan says, "I also haven't forgotten about the cooked mackerel. I will definitely repay you for that too." Isu says, "Okay, just tell me if you want to eat that again." Hyan says, "I hate fish." Isu replies, "That's good to know. Anyway, what kind of magic do you use?" Hyan responds, "You want me to tell you that for free?" Isu says, "I don't think I'm asking that for free." In the next scene, we see that Ieyasu has to make bread again. He collects all the ingredients and thinks pound cake has simple ingredients and is easy to make. Traditionally, flour, egg, sugar, and butter are mixed. It's also delicious if we add veggies and bacon. Chocolate and green tea are good too. Also lemon. In the next scene, he starts making bread and thinks, will it be tasty for her? I don't know what she'll say. Just then, Hein arrives. She asks, "Is that bread? When can we eat it? You do know that I'm diligently harvesting the potato flowers, right?" Isu says, "How would I know if those fell off because of the wind or if it was really you? That's the information I want in return for making this bread." Hyen says, "I am a witch with the power to control water." Isu gets shocked and thinks, is she somehow related to the family that manages the water in Armenia? Then he says, "Can you show me some magic?" Hyen replies, "Give me bread. Delicious ones, 10 of them. And cook it faster." Isu says, yes. The cake is ready." Hyen can't wait to eat the cake. She asks Ayo to cut it quickly. Isu says, "Just wait a while," but the cake doesn't come out of the bowl. Then Isu remembers that he forgot to butter the bowl. Isu says, "It's a little burnt at the edges, but try it. I wonder what it tastes like." They both start eating the cake.
Hyen loves it.
Isu thinks, this cake is very sweet. Then he asks, "How does it taste?" Hyen says, "It's delicious." Isu replies, "Is that so?" Then Hyen says, "Anyway, do you have any milk?" Isu says, "Do I owe you milk? Go get it by yourself from the cow." Hyen says, "I hate animals. By the way, why do you live alone?" Isu replies in a sad tone, my parents passed away. Hyen says in a cold tone, it's better for useless parents to die early. This reminds Isu that her grandmother had said that Hyen has a problem in her heart. That's why she behaves like this. He starts wondering, does this mean Hyen is a psychopath? Then Isul asks, what do you feel when you see an animal? Hyen replies, I feel like killing them. Isu says, what? Hyen asks, do you also think that something is wrong with what I just said? Oziu thinks, how did she end up like this? Then he says, I came to this place to get some comfort. You should go now. Then Hyen asks, why? Are you going to finish the rest of the bread all by yourself? Then Isu gives her a piece of bread. After that, Hyen says, you are a good person. In the next scene, we see Isu lying on his bed, thinking to himself, I understand what it feels like to lose someone important to you. In such a situation, we don't have enough energy to consider other people's feelings, but still, Hyen is a bit worse. In the next scene, we see some people brutally killing the residents of a nearby village. During the fight, one man escapes with great difficulty. In the following scene, that boy is brought in front of the village head. The boy has fainted. When he regains consciousness, he becomes very frightened. The village head says, calm down. You passed out as soon as you got off the carriage. Then the boy says, Father, hurry up. Lucian village was attacked. They might come this way, so we better go. The village head says, it's all right. If they were really planning to attack this place, they would have arrived here already. Izuo is also present and hears everything. He thinks, he's right. The two villages are only 2 hours apart. If they were coming, they'd be here by now. Then the village head says to everyone, it's late already, let's gather again next time. The next day, Miss Ja's bodyguard comes and announces something. He tells everyone, I'm going to stay here for a while and observe their movements. Seeing this soldier, all the villagers start asking, what will happen next? At that very moment, Izu arrives. Izu asks, why is the Mio family stepping into this? The soldier replies, all I can say is that we were also affected. If you choose representatives among you, I will assign a knight to go there with you. In the next scene, Izu thinks, this is weird. A lot of injured, but no casualties. I'm sure there's a reason why they only injured those people and didn't kill them. Then Ashu goes to Hyen. He first calls Hyen, but she does not come out. Then he says bread, which makes Hyen come out immediately. Izu thinks, I'm sure she'd even follow a stranger if they offered her bread. Then Hyen says, I'll make you some bread. Izu asks, instead, can I ask you something? What's with the poker face? Hyen replies, what do you want? Izu asks, what are the positions of the nobles in the Man Nation? You know, something like count and marquis. Hyen says, we have counts but no marquises. Izu says, oh, elaborate then. Hyen replies angrily, one question is enough. Then she continues, from now on asking questions isn't free. 1 bread loaf per question. Izu says, you are a savage robber. Desio is then forced to go and make a cake. Hyen asks, are you going to make bread with these this time? She gets very happy. Then Iso starts telling the recipe while making it. He says, first I'm going to put this mingle and mix it several times, then put some oil on the pan and place the batter on it. Hyen says, cook it already, I'm hungry. Isu says, we have to cook this slowly on a slim fire. Hyen says, you must not be good yet with your magic. Isu says, this isn't magic. We see that he makes a pancake. When it's ready, Hyen is just staring at the food. Isu says, stop staring and eat it. Then she eats it and likes it very much. She asks, what is this? How can a piece of bread be this soft? Isu says, that's called a pancake. Then Hyen eats the whole pancake. Isu says, if you're eating, can you answer my question now? Hyen says, don't be so impatient. Isu says, oh, sorry. Then she says, first, the highest position is the emperor. That bastard rules this entire kingdom. Isu asks, are you really allowed to say it that way? Hyen says, I am going to kill him with my own hands anyway. Isu thinks, what a troublesome kid she is. Then he says, okay, continue. Hyen says, Next is the Duke. It's a position given to the wizard family and the indirect royal descendants. Next are the counts and the rest of the nobles. Isu asks, "That's all?" Heian says, "Next are the people who buy the certificate of nobility." Isu asks, "How much is that certificate?" Heian replies, 5,000 gold coins. Then Isu asks, "By the way, why do you want to kill the king?" Heian replies, "He is the enemy of my kind." Izo asks, "But don't the other wizards get along well with the emperor?" Heian shouts, "Don't act like you know everything, you aren't even a wizard." Isu says, "What a terrible mistake on my part." Then Heian says, "Anyway, I'm going to go to Hermania City. From now on, give me 1 gold per question." Isu asks, "You don't have a transportation fee." Then Iyasu asks again, "Bread or gold, choose one." Sachin says, "That's a hard question, I'll think about it." In the next scene we see Iao riding in a horse-drawn carriage somewhere. He begins vomiting again due to motion sickness. He thinks, without the pill for motion sickness, I'm no better than a dog. Heian says, "Mr. Isu, are you all right?" Isu replies, "Yes." Then he asks, "Anyway, the village looks so much better in just 2 weeks." Heian says, "Didn't I tell you?" "Okay, now I'm telling you." Actually, the Pang family spent a huge sum of money and hired a healing wizard. They helped to cure the villagers and restore the village. Izu asks, "Pang family? The one who was buying the lands here?" Heian replies, "That's right." Then Isu thinks, the land they were planning to buy just got ambushed by bandits, but they restored it for free. Then Isu asks, "What's their condition?" Heian says, "Condition? Actually, they don't say anything about a condition." Isu thinks, this is suspicious. Then he says, "Anyway, I'm glad the people are okay." Heian says, "Right, then shall we meet here after finishing our own business?" Isu says, "Sure." In the next scene Isu says, "I finally sold all the black pepper I brought." He sees some people talking in front of him. One man says, "I met the bandits on my way here to Count Maith's territory." Another man says, "Really?" Then the first man continues, "They say the bandits are wandering around with this area as their center. But I heard Count Meath isn't even putting on a guard." The second man says, "What if the bandits have something to do with the Meath family?" What do you thinks lies? The knights of the Meath family have been guarding the streets for the last 2 weeks. Then a third man says, "I'll kick their asses if they try to come here again. You know, when I met them a few days ago, I glared at them without getting scared. One of them had an awful-looking scar on his jaw, but I still acted bravely, started to beg after I stabbed him." Isu listens and realizes this man is talking about someone he had met before. In the next scene we see Heian coming to Isu and shouting, "Bread! Where is my bread?" Isu replies, "Today I will harvest potatoes." Heian says, "Bread first." Then a small fight starts between the two. One says she wants bread, the other says he wants potatoes. Then Isu says, "I will show you how to do this. So watch carefully and learn." Isu begins to explain to Heian how to get the potatoes out from under the dust. He says, "Dig the dirt under these roots as carefully as possible. Then some big round roots will show up, like this." Heian says, "It's ugly." Isu says, "Doesn't this look like you?" Then he adds, "Have you ever seen a mirror in your life? You said you were 23 years old, right? Now I understand why you couldn't get married until now. Today, I'm going to cook with this one." Heian asks, "Not bread?" Isu says, "If you don't want it, don't eat this." Heian says, "Let's see what you've got first." Then Isu washes the potatoes thoroughly and refreshes them. Heian asks, "So what are you going to make using these things?" Isu replies, "Potato pancake. It's a simple food you can cook with just potatoes and oil." Heian says, "It doesn't sound tasty." Isu says, "Just help me, I'll make you some bread later." Then Heian says, "Give me the knife." Isu gets scared and says, "Have you ever even used this before?" Then he says, "Just grind the potatoes that I give you using this." Heian says, "Okay, sure, I can do something as simple as this." Then we see that she starts grinding the potatoes very fast. Isu is afraid and says, "Hey, let me do it." Then we watch as they grind the potatoes. Isu says, "I didn't expect that you couldn't even peel a potato properly." Hyen says, "It took a long time even for you." Isu says, "Didn't know that you had no idea how to grind potatoes." Hyen says, "Shut up." Then Isu says, "Now we will place this ground potato on the sieve. Throw away the water floating above and mix the residue of potato starch with the grated potato. Then spread a layer of oil on the frying pan and fry it." Hyen says, "That's delicious to you." Isu says, "If you want to add texture to this food, you just need to use some potato slices in it. You can also put in some veggies if you want. It all depends on your personal taste. Now it's done. Go ahead and try this." Hyen starts looking at her food carefully. Iju says, "Eat it before it gets cold." Hyen says, "Don't rush me." Iwaju watches her. It seems she liked the food very much. While eating, Hyen says, "These edge parts are especially tasty." Isu thinks she knows how to enjoy this even though she doesn't know how to enjoy expensive ribs. Then he says to Hyen, "Next time I'll make you some potato bread with the potatoes you harvest." Hyen says, "I like the pound cake more." Isu says, "But you seem like you're really enjoying that potato pancake right now." We see that Rose has come to Maggie's house after a long time. Maggie says, "You're here." Rose says, "Yes, by the way, you've been doing fine, haven't you? This time I'll be staying here for about 3 days. Cook me lots of delicious food, okay?" Then Isu comes in and tells Rose, "Miss, can I have some of your time?" Rose gets shocked. In the next scene, Rose says, "So what is this all about?" Isu replies, "I have a favor to ask of you." Rose says, "A favor?" Isu says, "There is something I heard from the villagers in Luchan." Rose asks, "Then?" Isu says, "First I would like to tell you that I am not suspecting the Miao family, so don't be offended by me. I also know that your family has assigned the guards too." Rose asks, "What is it that you want to say?" Isu says, "Someone has already started spreading fake rumors about the Miao family, so before the rumor spreads further, a scar on the chin. Could you check if someone has a knife scar on the chin in your land?" Hyen says, "Are you saying that you think the culprit is in our land? Let's say it's him. What are we going to do when we find him?" Isu says, "I already have a plan for that." Rose says, "If you are planning to harm the reputation of a noble, try to think again, if this goes wrong as punishment." In the next scene we see Rose eating something and saying, "No punishment for that. The food has been cooked by Isu." Rose says, "What is this? It's so soft. Did you make a taste like this with butter? If you knew how to do this since long ago, why didn't you make me one before?" Isu says, "I'm glad you like it. So about my favor." Rose says, "Don't worry, all you want is a letter when I find him, right?" Isu says, "Yes, then I will go there." Rose says, "Okay, I can do that, it's nothing hard. Anyway, how did you make this?" Isu says, "Do you remember the potato you brought me first? I washed it clean and then sliced it." Rose says, "Seriously, these country people are so easy to fool." Isu says, "What?" Rose says, "Why are you revealing the information that only you know to others? You should sell that information in exchange for money. Why do you think craft masters earn more than farmers? It's because they have a special trick only they know. They only teach those tricks to their children. When they get wealthy, they'll buy the certificate of nobility and become nobles." Isu says, "Then I guess I can't tell you the recipe." Rose says, "Then instead of that, along with Miss Gay." Isu says, "Okay, enjoy your meal." After a few days we see Rose, who has come to someone's house. Rose says, "Guard, step aside." The guard says, "I was told not to let anyone in." Rose says, "Is that so?" Then someone from inside says, "I heard that someone was spouting. Let's see who that is." Rose says, "It's us who hired the bandits to attack the Luchan village. What kind of child dares to use their long tongue in that way?" Someone from inside tells Rose to come in. One man says, "Hello, Miss Jane Rose. Have you been well?" Rose tells the person, "Lift your face." That person does not give any answer. Rose, while pulling his hair, says, Didn't you hear me? Lift your head up before I smash it. The person sitting in front tells the man to lift his face. We see that it is the same man we encountered once before. The man in front is Rose's father. Rose says, "Father," she continues, "there is something I would like to tell you, just the two of us." Rose tells everything to her father. Then she asks, "What are you going to do now?" Her father says, "That man who just confessed is the territory manager of our family. I knew that the other nobles were planning something, but I didn't expect them to try pulling our honor down by buying our manager." Rose says, "We should tie him upside down and beat him until his insides fall out of his mouth. He still hasn't said anything about the one who paid him to do that, right?" Her father says, "Yes. He claims that everything was planned by himself." Rose says, "Then let's just torture him by drowning him for a week straight." The next day we see Isu going to a place in a beautiful-looking carriage. He reaches the place and we see Rose waiting for him. Isu is quite surprised to see Rose's new getup. He thinks, she is definitely the daughter of a duke. Rose says, "What is with that reaction? Anyway, this isn't right to test a guest who has just arrived like this, but let's take care of that first." Isu says, "Okay." Then Rose asks, "So what is your plan?" Isu says, "This is a treasure of my family. It's made by a wizard with the power of the thunder god and the god of wisdom." Then he shows her something and says, "It's called a lie detector." Rose says, "You don't have to explain it with such minute details. So it's an artifact, right?" Isu says, yes, it's an artifact." Then Rose says, "So this distinguishes lies from the truth." Isu says, "You are right." Rose thinks, who the hell is he really? He's got an artifact as an heirloom, and there's also a wizard in his continent. Artifacts aren't things ordinary civilians can even see. Then she replies, "Okay, let's use this right away." Isu asks, "Don't you want to check what would happen if someone lies?" Rose gets a little scared and says, "Why? Will it kill me?" Isu says, No. Then we see that both of them try to get the truth out of the man's mouth with the help of the machine. Isu says, "From now on, if you tell the truth, God will be on your side, but if you lie, he will punish you by tearing your blood vessels apart." The man says, "Why should I believe that?" Isu says, "I will prove it in a simple way. Just say no to all my questions." Then Siu asks him the first question. "Miss JJ likes Aunt Humphrey's food, right?" Because of this question, everyone starts looking at Rose. The man says, "No." Then the machine detects the lie and gives an electric shock to the man. Yes says, "See, now we are done with the practice." Then Asu says with a horror-struck face, "If you lie once again, your family, children and even grandchildren will be punished for your sin. You will be punished by God who will tear your limbs apart." The man gets scared and says, "Please leave my family out of this. I just did what I was told to do." Isu becomes happy. Rose's father says to Isu, "I will continue from here. You can wait outside. Please take your artifact with you." Then we see Isu and Rose coming out of the room. Rose says, "That was quick." Isu says, "What should we do now?" Rose says, "There was something I prepared for you." Isu asks, "What?" Rose says, "I'm sure you'll like it a lot." We see a basket of cakes being brought to Isu as thanks. Isu gets shocked. Rose says, "Looks tasty, right? Try this. It's a flour dessert and is very popular among nobles and royals." Isu thinks this will be a very tasty dessert. But after eating it, he smells a lot of perfume, which he doesn't like very much. Rose says, "What do you think?" Isu says, "No comment." Then Rose says, "Try the others too." He says, "Okay," and thinks, "I hope that one tastes better." Rose says, "You can try each one of them." Then he eats another one and thinks, "I don't understand these tastes. It tastes like cosmetics, so terrible." After the lie-detecting incident, Isu has earned the trust of the media family. Now we see him relaxing after the incident. Rose and Isu are seen having a fun banter. After a while she asks, "By the way," Isu replies, "Yes." Rose continues, "Can I borrow this?" Isu is confused and asks, "What are you going to use it for, if I may ask?" Rose, with determination says, "I was thinking of disciplining some of the guards." Isu gets scared for the guards and denies her request. Later in the evening, Isu arrives before Count Medea and properly introduces himself. Rose asks her father, "How did it go? Is the Fia family really related to all of this?" Count Medea replies, "Yes. The royal family has decided to impose separate punishments. The man they instigated will be sentenced to prison for life." We see Count Medea being grateful to Isu, as he was the most helpful. The next morning, Isu wakes up from a comfortable sleep, then walks toward the window to watch the bustling town. As he feels the chilly air, he quickly shuts the window. In the meantime, his butler arrives and brings him morning tea, snacks, and a bathrobe for him to cover himself. To Isu, it felt weird that he was relaxing in this new world, but he made up his mind, "This world is my new home." When he heard a voice calling for him, stating that the meal was prepared and Isu was called to have a meal with Count Medea. At the dining table, we see Rose all excited as she watches Io wearing formal noble clothes, commenting, "You look as shiny as a new gold coin in that outfit." Isu feels embarrassed since he's not used to noble clothing but decides to have the meal with the Medea family. Rose is interrupted by her personal maid for her informal way of speaking. Feeling lectured, she orders the maid to bring the food. The dishes looked delicious. There were fruits, chicken, and fish. Yet when Ayachu tried the fish, it was bland and only tasted of salt and pepper. Rose, bold as ever, noticed Ayachu's reaction and spoke up. "Now you know why I keep going back to Mrs. Humphrey." Not wanting to make the Medea family feel bad, Izo compliments the food. Then he is served mutton ribs, which he finds good and not gamey. Rose's mother, feeling worried for her child, speaks up. "Goodness dear, aren't you a little picky about your food?" Rose answers in frustration, "You won't say that once you've tried Mrs. Humphrey's food, mother." Her mother says, "That's why I'm telling you to invite her over." After the meal, Rose and Isu go out to explore the town. While they are leaving, Count Medea and his personal butler have a deep conversation about Isu's rewards. But Lord Medea had something else in mind for Isu. He proposes, "Money isn't enough to express gratitude for what he has done for us." The butler is shocked and realizes that Lord Medea is thinking of writing a recommendation letter for Isu to become a noble. The butler explains that through the Count's recommendation, Isu can buy noble privileges without any restriction, but he also mentions that the Count rarely writes recommendations. After the discussion about recommendations, Count Medea and his butler have a fun conversation about Isu, common people, and hiring a butler. A few days later, we see a posh carriage with metal wheels and 2 horses pulling it. A familiar man sits inside. It's Isu. He now has the recommendation letter and 5,000 gold coins for buying the noble privilege. He thinks the money is too much for him, so he plans to save some in the bank. Soon they reach Rodan. Examining the weak fencing, he starts formulating ideas for a new fence around the village. On a beautiful morning, we see Isu and Hans working hard on the walls of Hans's house, since winter is coming. Hans, a bit curious, asks, "How do people in your hometown prepare for winter?" Isu is a bit confused as to how he should explain the idea of central heating, but tries. "We have something called undul," he says, which is an underfloor heating system. Basically, we lay stones on the floor and light a fire underneath, which warms the air and heats the stones. Hans is shocked and terrified. In a scared tone, he says, "So you grill people alive?" Isu had a rough idea how Hans would react, so he doesn't press the topic any further, but he begins planning how to build an ondol system himself. When he becomes a lord, he realizes he will have to build a designated room for it. Later, he comes up with another idea and asks Hans for help. Hans shows up to Isu's living quarters in the village with pork feet. Isu thanks him and asks him to place them on the table. We see Humphrey a bit excited and shouting to announce that Isu will be in charge of today's dinner. She later asks, "Everyone raise your hands if you're going to eat here. The rest who have family waiting back home can leave." Isu is shocked by the number of people wanting to try his cooking. He politely asks them, "It's going to take a while, why don't you all wait outside until it's ready?" As the last person steps out, the air around Isu changes. He brings out his secret weapon from another world, spices and condiments. He starts by cooking the pig's feet with water, beer and bay leaves, allowing it to boil. After the first boil, he removes the water and adds fresh water to boil the legs again, removing the gamey smell. Isu takes them in a bowl and adds soy sauce and herb tonic tea for marination, also adding salt and sugar for seasoning. After hours of hard labor and cooking, the dish is finally done. He announces, "Dinner is served, everyone." The people are shocked to see Isu's cooking. Some are even salivating to taste it. They are further amazed by the flavor of the pig's feet, having never tried anything like it before. Some start pestering Isu to share his recipe. Hans, mesmerized by the food, asks him, "Isu, the chewy skin is awesome. How did you make the sauce?" Isu, knowing he can't reveal his secret origins, says it's a family secret sauce that has been passed down for generations, so I can't tell you, sorry. Hans is a bit disappointed but understands. Later, Isu wants to enjoy the meal and finds an empty spot near a man. He asks for permission to sit next to him. The man agrees and says, "Sure, I'm Joker." Isu finds the man interesting, as he's a new face, and wants to know more about him. "I haven't seen you before. Are you a merchant? How did you come all the way here?" "Here in such cold weather," the man replied with an excited and playful laugh. "Yes, I run a fish shop. Fish sells well in weather like this." Isu replied thoughtfully, "I guess it's because the costs for preservation magic are lower in this cold weather." The man was impressed by Isu's answer and responded, "That's right, preservation magic is pretty expensive. Besides, climbing Mount Knots in this freezing weather is like wanting to get closer to the Lord, so this is a great opportunity to make a lot of money by selling fresh fish." The man, speaking in a tired tone, took a bite of Isu's cooking. He was instantly delighted, and a new source of energy seemed to awaken in him as he screamed in joy and kept showering Isu with compliments for the wonderful treat. Isu was a bit taken aback by the man's tenacity and riskier way of earning money, so he asked the man for his business card for future needs. A few days later, the terrifying and harsh cold hit the village. Isu, who didn't have any proper heating system, was shown sitting near the fireplace to warm himself. He saw this as a personal trial and believed it wouldn't last long. While he was deep in thought, he was interrupted by villagers screaming, "There's a fire!" Rushing out of his cottage, he saw the rising flames. He stood there devastated and confused as to why there was a fire. Soon Hans woke him up from his trance, asking him to help bring water to stop the fire from spreading. The village was in terror. Everyone ran, bringing water to fight the flames. A lady cried out, "Oh no, my house! Please save my house!" Just as the panic was rising, Heian entered the scene. With her water magic, she began chanting, "Meljum Kuto Noan Aru Dian," asking the water spirits for help. She summoned a large amount of water to save the village from burning down. The villagers were shocked to witness magic in action. Seeing a royal descendant of elves arriving to help them and their town was something they had never expected. As Heian cast her spell and formed a huge water ball that burst into rain, the fire was finally stopped from spreading further. With the fire calmed, the villagers stood in awe. Whispers filled the air. "Wasn't that magic just now? What is a mage doing in our village?" Though feeling weak from using her mana, Heian stood her ground. An old man spoke up in a soft voice and bowed down in gratitude. Seeing him, the rest of the villagers followed and expressed their heartfelt thanks. Isu was proud of her and tried calling her, but she ignored him and walked back to her living quarters. The villagers began discussing plans to renovate the burned houses, and some even came up with good ideas. Still, Isu remained worried about Heian. The next morning, Isu rushed to Heian's quarters and knocked gently on her door. "Hey Heian, it's me," he said, holding a brown bag. She slowly opened the door, looking gloomy and tired from using her mana the day before. Seeing him, she asked in a frustrated voice, "What do you want?" Isu tried to convince her to talk, but she shut the door on his face and snapped, "You're wasting my precious time." Knowing she was in a bad mood, Isu tried a different approach. "Guess what the bread mage brought you," he teased. Feeling both hungry and curious, Heian slowly opened the door again and spoke in a disgusted yet warm tone. "You're becoming more and more cunning by the day." Isu laughed softly and replied, And you still wear your heart on your sleeve. As his laughter faded, he noticed the bags under her eyes and became concerned. He gently asked, "What happened?" She replied nonchalantly, "Magical powers don't pop out of nowhere, you know." Isu realized how much mana she had used and sincerely thanked her for saving the village. Feeling embarrassed by his gratitude, she spoke in a pouty and half-angry tone. "I didn't do it for the village, I did it to protect the bread mage." Isu, knowing she was moody, didn't press further. Instead, he asked in a serious tone, "By the way, are you okay with the villagers knowing your identity?" She understood her secret was out, and that it might lead to people disturbing her. Still, in a foul mood, she replied irritably, "That's none of your business, I'll take care of it. I need to rest, so hand over what you have and beat it." Izu, understanding her exhaustion, did as she asked. As he handed over the bag, he explained, "Those are called egg cookies." Just as he was about to say more, she shut the door firmly, leaving him standing there alone. He thought to himself, she really needs to work on her temper. As he walked away, he shrugged and mused, "Well, I'm sure they have egg cookies here as well, so I can skip the explanation." Meanwhile, Hyen watched him leave. Her eyes followed his figure for a little while before turning her attention to the egg cookies. She was quite mesmerized by their appearance and muttered, "Cookies baked with eggs, but they don't smell like the ones I know." She picked one up. It looked extremely delicious and crispy. The moment she took a bite, it melted on her tongue. Only one sentence escaped her lips: "They're delicious." Later we see the villagers gather around the riverside for a festival, but Isu is confused as to why everyone is gathered there until he meets Hans, who has shown up at the riverside all excited and dressed in new clothing. Still confused by the occasion, Isu asks Hans about it. That's when Hans hands him a pot. Confused, Isu asks, "A pot?" Hans replies, "Yes, we put a stone in the pot every year, which signifies our age. Make sure you find a pretty stone by the riverside." Though still puzzled, Isu accepts the gift from Hans and complies with the ritual. But curiosity lingers, and he asks Hans, "By the way, is this some kind of special day? This place is packed." Knowing Asu is not from the village and is an outsider, Hans replies, "Oh, you probably don't know. Asu, today is the village festival called Kwaz Saluna. That's when we place the stones in the pot." Isu finally understands the significance of the festival and enjoys it with the villagers. As the moon begins to rise, the village chief stands on a platform waiting to speak. The crowd goes quiet as he begins, "Please watch over our Radran throughout the coming year as well." As the speech continues, fireworks go off in the distance, and people can be seen laughing and enjoying themselves. Hans and Isu talk about how long the ritual goes on. As people gather, Isu has a small conversation with the chief and asks for permission to continue staying in the village. The chief nods in approval. Later, the chief calls everyone to form a line. The villagers get excited, knowing it's time for the Kwaz Salona ritual. The chief marks everyone's forehead with a red powder mixed with water. As the chief slowly marks each person, Isu grows nervous. This is his first Kwaz Saluna, and he awaits his turn. After he is marked, Hans tells him, "Next we put the stone in our pots and make a wish." Isu nods and does as Hans says. He closes his eyes and wishes, "I wish for this year to be happier than the last one. Mom, Dad, I'm doing good, and I really miss you both." After Kwaz Salona days pass, we see Asu preparing to leave the village. He makes sure to pack all the essential things: food, water, a first aid kit, and most importantly, the money gifted by Count Medich. Later he meets up with Rose and they have a conversation about how Isu can buy noble privilege. Rose also mentions that he can buy the status in Pusing. Rose explains, "Pusing is a port city run by us, the Medich family. We initially used the manga port, but the family that controlled it started imposing heavy taxes, so we had to find a new port." Isho understands their situation and Rose continues, "Every port has a royal administration that issues rank certificates. Since you have my father's recommendation letter, you can easily buy one in Pusing." Ishu feels the generosity gifted to him by Count Medich and feels deeply indebted to the Medich family for this amazing opportunity. But then Rose states, before that you need to overcome one more hurdle. Isu falls into deep thought, realizing that he has to pay a hefty price for noble privilege. He wonders if he's being pulled into some kind of scam but shakes off the doubt, choosing to trust Count Medich. He feels he's rushing to buy noble status and keeps thinking of other ways to use his 8,000 gold, like buying a great house back in his original world. But he dismisses the idea, saying to himself, the reason I decided to buy the status first is because I want to find my purpose in life here. Since I've come all the way to another world, why not make good use of my time and at least become a feudal lord? He had made up his mind. Later we see Isu and Hyen having a delightful chat. While eating, Hyen speaks with a stuffed mouth. I want to go to Prissine too. Isu smiles at her clumsiness and says, swallow your food before speaking. She nods, finishes the bread Isu brought, and starts coughing while hitting her chest to swallow, looking very childish and cute. After swallowing the food, she says with a proud and loud voice, take me with you to Prissine. I'll be your guard. Isu is a bit shocked and laughs softly, saying, I doubt someone so feeble can protect me. Hyen pouts at him. He feels a little bad but enjoys seeing her pout. That's when Hyen decides to show off her skills. She collects water using magic and brings it close to Isu's weak points. The icicles she forms are so sharp that they could seriously harm him. Scared for his life, Isu shouts, hey, what's the big idea? Get this away from me. It's clear Isu is genuinely terrified, but Hyen smirks and says, I haven't used this magic in a while, so I might struggle to control my power. Inju, furious and worried, replies, another reason not to take you. You're staying here. But Hyen doesn't agree. She refuses Isu's rejection. It seems she has another motive. That's when she says, it's Martha. I want to pay you back for what you've done for her. If you decide to accept my offer, I plan to use my power solely for you for a year. Isu is a bit taken aback. Taken aback by her sentiments, Isu was about to speak when Hyen interrupted. Besides, I also need to continue having the bread mage's bread. She seemed a bit irritated that today's offering wasn't bread, though she remained moody. She admitted, it wasn't bread this time, but it was still delicious. Isu was confused by her irritation, as he was sure she'd like the dessert. It was made with the cheese he and Humphrey had prepared together. Hyen explained, I also liked the crunchy biscuit at the base. The savoriness goes well with the saltiness of the cheese. While she complimented him, she still added, but bread is better. Isu smiled at her and asked, by the way, what will you do if I decline? She replied with a nonchalant and irritated look, I'll take you for the worst dimwit ever and flee this village. Isu sighed and thought that taking Hyen along would be better than going alone. Everything was set, money was prepared, and he'd be working with a mage who controlled water. Still, he felt that 1 year was too short, so he asked her, hey, but does it have to be a year? Hyen was surprised by Isu's cleverness and replied in a mocking tone, I guess you're smarter than I thought. She then explained that she had royal duties too and couldn't follow him around forever. Isu understood and thought to himself, today is just the first day. That's when Hyen dropped her demand. Instead, provide me a loaf of tasty bread every single week. Isu was confused, thinking, she clearly said she wanted to show gratitude, so why is she talking about conditions? He began calculating the gains and losses from her demand, and it clearly ended up with him at a loss. But then he smiled wickedly and decided he'd make sure to use Hyen and her powers to cover his losses. That was the terrifying logic of the human mind. Hyen noticed Isu staring at her and asked, why are you staring at me with your yucky eyes? He responded with a polite and innocent tone, excuse me, what are you talking about? This showed just how clever and mysterious Isu could be. The next morning, they left for Prissine. We see expensive carriages and lots of materials prepared for camping. A kid popped up and said, Isu, thanks for the ride. An expensive carriage sure feels nice. Isu smiled and welcomed him. The kid and Isu chatted about how he got the carriage, and Isu explained that Rose had gifted it to him. That's when the kid whispered into Isu's ear, anyway, when did you and Hyen become, a thing? Isu was confused and immediately rejected the idea. Kairiden, overhearing it, laughed loudly and appreciated the joke. Yasu was a bit hurt, and said she wasn't his type. It was obvious Heian wasn't interested in him romantically, except for his bread. We then get a glimpse into Heian's past life. She explained that she is the only known descendant of half-elves, as the pure elves have long gone extinct. Those were difficult times, but they managed to survive. Heian believed that hiding her appearance would prevent misunderstandings. Still, after going out, she realized the outside world could feel refreshing. The fresh air on her skin made her feel alive, yet she also carried deep sadness related to her family and couldn't afford to goof around like Isu. Curious about Asu, she asked, "Yasu, you said you're a voyager, right?" Isu nodded. Understanding his answer, she asked further, "That means you're not going to stay in Furun. Where are you planning to go next?" Isu replied, "I'm not sure yet, but for now, I'm going to become a feudal lord." She was a bit suspicious and commented, "I've never seen a feudal lord wander around without guards." Isu smiled and said, "That's because I'm not a feudal lord yet." Still unsure about his true identity, she asked, "Are you some aristocrat who came to the real world for experience?" Isu politely declined and assured her he was really a commoner. She wasn't sure he understood how difficult becoming a feudal lord was and said, "Do you think it's easy to become a feudal lord?" Isu replied playfully, "Careful, you're talking to a future baron here." They had a deeper conversation about titles like baron and count. She explained how 9 out of 10 barons get stripped of their titles for being unable to pay taxes. But Iyasu remained calm and said, "No worries, I'm going to get filthy rich anyway." Intrigued, she asked, "That's interesting, and how do you plan to do that?" He smirked and reminded her, "I'm the bread mage. I can always open a bakery shop in a large city." She was on board with his plan and agreed it was a fantastic idea. As they traveled, it started to get dark. They set up camp near a safe spot and rested. At dawn, everyone began gathering their belongings and cleaning up, preparing to continue their journey. Isu was looking for Heian when she suddenly appeared from the forest. Isu was happy to see her and went to speak, but Heian ignored him. He didn't feel bad. He was used to her cold demeanor. Still curious about what she was doing in the forest so early, he tried to peek. That's when he discovered a group of wild dogs had been killed. As they continued traveling in the carriage, Isu turned and asked, "The one who killed those wild dogs, right?" Isu asked. She replied nonchalantly, "Why do you ask?" Isu was proud of her for stepping up to protect them from the wild dogs and felt happy that she was doing something good. As they traveled further, they came to a halt, confused. And Shu asked, "Why did you suddenly stop?" The boy replied that they had to pay a toll. That's when Shu had an idea. He picked up his recommendation letter from Count Matti, which allowed him to save money. The boy and Isu shared some light banter about the recommendation letter. The boy was shocked, as Count Matti rarely gave out recommendations. When Iosu reached the registration office, he submitted the letter and 5,000 gold coins to buy his title. The clerk, pleased with the recommendation, asked, "So your name is Isu, may I have your surname?" Iosu was momentarily dazed. He didn't have a surname, which was fairly common. The clerk suggested he pick one from the book. Risu rampaged through the pages, not finding anything suitable, until he came across a beautiful name, Bloom. He picked it as his surname. After his selection, the clerk asked him to sign the papers and then announced, "Sir Ius Bloom," granting him the title of Baron. After the signature, Isu asked the clerk if he could leave. The clerk then explained, "From here on, to earn the title of Count, you must undergo training at a Count's estate for 3 years and pay an annual tax of at least 1,000 gold each year until you have satisfied the 50,000 gold requirement." Isu had almost forgotten about these conditions. He spoke up, "I'm thinking of getting my training from the Medi family. Do I have any other options?" The clerk offered him a shortcut. He could pay 10,000 gold coins for a completion certificate. Isu felt a bit uneasy and asked if he could have some time to think about it. The clerk agreed. As he stepped out, Heian approached him with a disgusted look on her face, saying, "Did you seriously buy that certificate?" Isu replied, "Careful. From now on, address me as Baron Bloom." This irritated Hyen, and she cracked a joke about making him kneel in front of the Grand Mage, which terrified Isu, but it turned out to be a joke. Later she said she was hungry, and the two of them visited a fancy restaurant and ordered food. When the food arrived, Hyen looked at it with suspicion. Isu, a bit skeptical of her not liking seafood, still tried to feed her the shrimp by placing it on her plate. As she tasted the shrimp, she felt the waves and saltiness of the ocean. It mesmerized her with delight. Isu felt proud and happy that she enjoyed it. However, she felt something was missing and ordered the server to bring lemon water, as it goes well with seafood. Her tone was a bit rude. Seeing this, Isu felt bad for the server and said gently to Hyen, "Be a little more polite." Hyen was irritated and replied in an annoyed tone, "This is how I talk. I can't help it." Isu responded after thinking deliberately, "But that's not how you talk when you ask for bread." Hyen answered, "That's because I'm getting free, delicious bread, better than what I can find at an upscale bakery. Obviously I'll be kind." Isu silently agreed with her in the back of his mind. She then explained, "Lobster isn't cheap, and not bringing lemon water shows unprofessionalism." Isu developed newfound respect for her after hearing her explanation. She was right. Hyen then ordered Isu to peel shrimps for her. He complied without any resistance, which made her smile a little. The next morning, both Isu and Hyen were wandering around the city when Hyen said, "This place reeks of fish. It's stinging my nose." Isu, a bit worried, replied, "That's the smell of the ocean. Hang in there. Have you ever seen an ocean before?" Realizing it was her first time seeing the ocean, he smiled. Despite being grumpy, she was actually excited. After walking some distance, they arrived at the port. The beautiful scenery left Hyen lost in awe. The fresh waves, the cold sea air, and the bustling town, it was all a new experience for her. The first words that came out of her mouth after seeing the breathtaking scene were, "Ah, it's so big." Meanwhile, Isu found a perfectly flat stone and called out, "Hyen, wanna see something cool?" Confused by what he meant, she stayed silent. Isu grinned, stretched his body, pulled his arm back, and threw the stone from the side. It skipped across the ocean water 7 times. Hyen, still silent, was curious to try. She picked up a stone and threw it, but it sank immediately. Isu said politely, "That's not how you throw it." Unbeknownst to him, Hyen used magic to make the stone skip more than 7 times. Isu protested, "That's cheating." Hyen smirked and replied nonchalantly, "Too bad you're not a mage." This irritated Isu, and he wanted revenge. That's when Hyen called out, "Let's go, Baron Bloom." Isu felt a shock run down his spine as he was not used to being called Baron. Isu said, "Don't call me that in public. I need some time to get used to it." Hyen agreed, and they both walked around the city for a while before stumbling across the architecture guild which Isu had been searching for. He entered the guild and was greeted by a middle-aged man in his 40s, who asked, "What help can I provide?" Isu spoke his mind. "I would like to build an underground store." The clerk understood his request and asked him to be seated while he formulated the plans. After some time, the clerk asked, "What size do you have in mind?" Isu replied right away, "It'll be a shared storage space for the entire village." Understanding Isu's needs, the clerk nodded and started designing the structure. Meanwhile, Isu explained, "It's a village called Rerun, with 70 residents. It's about 3 days' distance from here if you take the East Provincial Road." After listening, the clerk summarized, "Considering travel expenses, materials, and labor, it will cost a total of 52 gold. Isu thought to himself, building a log cabin costs 20 gold, so building an underground storage facility for 52 gold is pretty reasonable. Then a doubt crept into his mind. He asked the clerk, "How much would it cost to build a feudal lord's estate?" The clerk replied, "That really depends." Isu then said thoughtfully, "Let's say, as big as the Meta family's castle, for example." After considering the query and the size of the Medi family's castle, the clerk replied, "If we're only talking about the inner castle, it would cost around 50,000 gold at today's prices." Isu was in complete shock. That amount was overwhelming, about 5 billion won in his world, a long way off for him. The clerk then spoke with pride. Our great-great-grandfather built the Medi family's castle, so I believe it's fair to say I've inherited the know-how. Hearing his proud words, Aishu asked for his business card. In return, the clerk asked for Aishu's name. Isu replied with pride, "It's Isu Bloom, Baron Bloom." Hearing his name and title, the clerk became nervous and loudly asked for forgiveness. He promised to personally go and build the storage facility in Isu's village. Isu felt a bit strange being called Lord by someone older than him, but shook off the thought. He then requested the clerk to meet him at the shop by dusk, which the clerk accepted with a nervous nod. This demeanor made Isu feel a bit weird, almost like he was the boss. This kind of authority wasn't something he was used to back in Korea, and it made him uncomfortable. As he walked out of the guild, he thought to himself, I hope this is enough of a farewell gift. While walking, he stumbled upon a cute dog that caught his attention. As he paused, Hyen, waiting for him, said irritably, "Stop getting sidetracked and let's head home already." Isu asked her to wait for a while, but Hyen, clearly irritated, told him to hurry. He thought she was being a bit stingy, but ignored it. Instead, he focused on enjoying the dogs. He asked the man nearby, "Which breed are they?" The man replied proudly, "They're border collies. They're trained as sheepdogs and specialize in herding." This made Iyasu want to adopt them and gift them to Rodin to help the villagers with their farms. As Aishu admired the dogs, the man explained, "When herding sheep, you send them signals by blowing a grass blade or using a whistle." Izu was really impressed and asked curiously, "How many would I need to herd a flock of 50 sheep?" The man examined the question and confidently replied, "One should be more than enough." Isu then asked, "How much do I need to pay?" The man replied, 3 gold, sir." Isu excitedly said, "In that case, I'll take them in pairs." He paid the man on the spot, thrilled. He thought about the villagers and how helpful the dogs would be, but if they didn't need them, he would raise the dogs himself. He adored them too much. Then a realization struck him hard. Hyen hates animals. What he had just done was a big mistake. He glanced at Hyen's face, and it was clear she disliked animals. He wondered what kind of trauma or experience she had gone through. As time passed and a new day arrived, the clerk from the Architecture Guild waited for Isu on time. The dogs were energetic and excited to see Isu, licking all over his face, which disgusted Hyen. She sarcastically gave the dogs an affectionate nickname with an irritated tone, saying, "You call them babies? Since when were you a dog?" She was irritated because the dogs got the best seats, which made her feel even more annoyed with Isu. After settling the dogs in the carriage, Isu called for the clerk and politely said, "By the way, I have a request." The man smiled and asked, "What would that be, sir?" Isu replied, "The villagers don't know I've become a baron yet, so I would like you to address me as Isu for today." The clerk agreed with a smile and took his leave. After conversing with the clerk, Isu returned to the carriage and started riding with Hyen. Curious about her thoughts, he asked, "So how did you like Pising City?" Hyen was irritated and replied to him in a loud, annoyed voice, "Why did you even bother becoming a noble instead of just traveling?" Isu understood that she was a bit shy and responded in a light-hearted tone, "Sounds like you had fun." Later he smiled softly at her and said, "Let's travel together here and there for the next year." Hyen had an understanding look on her face and spoke in a gentle voice, "You said you're going to get trained at the Medi household, correct?" Aishu agreed, and Hyen continued, "When are you planning to leave?" Ishu replied, "About a week from now. Why do you ask?" After hearing his answer, Hyen spoke again, "Because I need to get prepared before we leave." Iyashu was a bit taken aback by her response, and asked with a curious tone, "Are you sure? You might draw people's attention." Hyen replied confidently, "I have a plan. All you need to do is follow my lead." As the days passed, Yi and Hyen reached Rira. The villagers were excited to see them back. A few of them started announcing his return, which made everyone happy. One of the villagers, shocked by the gifts Eoja brought, exclaimed in surprise, "Goodness, look at all this. He brought us expensive seafood, is planning to build us underground storage, and even brought us these sheepdogs." The dogs were especially fond of the village chief and began licking and showing affection to him. The chief, speaking in a delighted tone, said, "This is your home from now on." As he enjoyed watching the dogs and the chief play together, he was interrupted by a crying Hans. "Are you really leaving?" Hans asked. Isu replied warmly, "Yeah, I'm thinking of exploring other places." Hans responded, still softly crying but not showing much sadness. "I see, so it was true, that makes me a bit sad." Isu was a little shocked that Hans didn't seem very sad about his departure, which made him feel slightly down, but he kept a smile on his face to hide it. After living in Rodan for a few more days, the time for Iosu's departure arrived. He began packing his essentials, his toothbrush, soap and towel for the journey. While packing, he thought to himself, "I need to complete an 800-hour training course to be officially titled a baron." He kept thinking and planning, if I were to take 8 hours of lessons per day, it's a waste to open a new portal if I'm only gone for 3 to 4 months. So let's leave it here. As he packed, his mind wandered to Hyen because he was worried about her. He remembered his talk with Martha, where she explained that Hyen refused to go to the city due to fear of her identity being exposed. He kept wondering whether he should take her or not. Meanwhile, Hyen was alone at Martha's grave, mourning. She spoke quietly, "Martha, I feel uneasy thinking about leaving you here and going away. You were a great mother and a good friend." We see a glimpse of Hyen's past, where she's bratty and screaming. "Are you saying she wasn't my mother? Then where is my real mother? Get rid of that woman and bring me my real mother." In her memories, we see Martha sweet and kind. Even after being harshly told to leave, she returned to Hyen with a bright smile, though Hyen was still angry and screamed at her. When she saw Martha smiling and bringing her something, she calmed down and began to trust her again. In another memory, Martha was wrongly accused of stealing. She cried out in front of the Duke, "I really didn't steal that necklace. I'm innocent, madam." The Duke, furious and believing the accusation, shouted, "You aren't even showing a hint of remorse. Have you no shame?" As she was being scolded, Hyen jumped in and defended her, shouting Martha would never do such a thing. "It's that witch, she set her up." Martha was surprised and deeply touched by Hyen standing up for her, but the Duke didn't trust his own daughter's words. He ordered the guards to lock Hyen in her room and have Martha executed. Worried for Martha, Hyen took her hand and fled the castle to the village. Remembering those moments, Hyen added softly, "Thank you, Martha, and I love you." She felt regret, especially when she remembered that Martha had once wanted to eat grilled mackerel with Iosu's special sauce. She regretted not asking Iosu to cook it for her again. Speaking to Martha's grave, she said, "A while ago he peeled some shrimp for me, and it was hard to hold back tears. It reminded me of you." She smiled faintly. "I had my doubts about him at first, but maybe he's not that bad of a guy like you said. Actually, he's more like interesting, I should say. That's why I decided to go with him." Just as she stood to leave, Isu came running toward her, calling her name. Before leaving Martha's grave, she spoke one last time. "Want to see if he really becomes a duke." With that, she left, hoping Martha's soul was in heaven, watching over her. Meanwhile, Isu was finishing his packing. He grinned and smiled to himself while holding a golden packet. Looking at it closely, it was ramen, a dish from his homeworld. Isu thought he had done a good job preparing for the trip. Before departing from the village, he cried tears of joy while nuzzling his cheek against the ramen packet, full of nostalgic happiness. We then see him prepare the noodles in a very unique way. Let's hear the recipe from the cook himself. It doesn't need many ingredients, so let's get it made quickly. First, we see Isu break the noodles very aggressively. The style he uses to break them makes him look both cute and funny. After breaking the noodles into pieces, he cooks them in a pan. Once they turn golden, he sprinkles some sugar over them. Finally comes the good stuff, the spice flavorings from the ramen packets. These are sprinkled on top of the golden fried or roasted noodles for a tangy experience. After mixing all the spices with the noodles, they are ready to be eaten. He names this dish ram tang, which he packs into individual brown packets for the villagers, as he was preparing to leave the village. After packing everything and stretching to ease his tired body, Isu feels a wave of sadness overcome him. This village had been his home for a while, and leaving it made his heart sink with guilt, sadness, and loneliness. As Ashu was handing out the ramtang, he was suddenly called by a crying Hans, who hugged him tightly and asked through sobs, "Promise me you'll visit us again." Feeling overwhelmed by Hans's strength, Ashu winced slightly from the tight hug but smiled and agreed. As he relaxed from Hans's embrace, the village chief called out to him with a bright smile and a warm, thankful tone. "Thank you from the sheepdogs to the basement storage, we're all truly grateful." Isu returned the smile warmly and welcomed the chief's kind words. However, he had a request. He asked the chief to leave his cottage untouched. The chief understood and promised that no one would disturb it. Feeling relieved by the chief's sincere tone, Isu finally walked to his carriage, which would take him to the Medi family. The people cried and shouted, saying how much they would miss Ayuso. It was a deeply touching farewell. As the carriage rolled out of the village and onto the path toward his noble training with the Meishi family, Ayuso called out, "Hayan, you can come out now, there's no one around to see you." However, there was something on Aishu's mind. He turned to her and asked, "Why did you decide to hide?" Hayan replied in an irritated tone, "I didn't want them to think we're intimately close. That would be unacceptable." Hearing her answer, Yu smiled brightly and replied, "You're wise and smart, I admire that." After long days of travel, they finally reached the Madi castle. However, their carriage was stopped by the guards. "Halt! What brings you here?" one of them asked. Isu responded politely, "Inform Lady Rose that Baron Isu Bloom has arrived. She'll know who I am." The knights nodded and went to deliver the message. Upon hearing of Iyasu's arrival, Rose ran out to welcome him with a bright smile and a warm tone. Seeing that Iyasu had traveled far, she suppressed her usual teasing nature and said politely, "Welcome Baron Bloom, I hope you had a safe trip." Isu nodded and jumped down from the horse with a warm smile. He then called Rose closer and said, "There's something you need to know before we head in." At that moment, Hayan stepped out of the carriage in her elven form, radiating an aura of confidence and nobility. The sudden appearance of a silver-haired woman shocked Rose. "Who is this silver-haired woman?" she asked. That's when Asu announced in an authoritative tone, "Please inform everyone that Hayan of the Silverwood family has arrived." Upon hearing the surname, Rose's expression changed to anger. She asked in an irritated tone, "Did you say Silverwood? You mean that petty?" Before she could complete her sentence, the butler swooped in and muffled her mouth with his hand, preventing her from saying anything further or insulting the Silverwood family. He then dragged her into the castle. Even while being dragged away, she continued to struggle and mumble behind the butler's hand. It was clear that she was truly furious and held no good opinion of the Silverwood family. After this chaos, Hyeon turned to Ayasu and asked, "I hope she didn't mean petty little family, or did she?" Isu felt a sharp gaze on his back, turned around quickly, and denied it with a nervous laugh, saying, "Of course not, and don't call her a shrew." He laughed awkwardly, trying to calm her down. This first meeting between the two young women was extremely tense, and Ayasu silently prayed to the gods that nothing worse would happen. Once inside the castle, Isu went straight to Count Medich and formally introduced himself. "Greetings, my lord. Allow me to reintroduce myself, Baron Asu Bloom." The Count responded kindly. "I've heard all about you, Baron Bloom. If you don't mind, I'd like to greet the person you're traveling with first." Isu had no objections. With his approval, the Count bent in front of Hyeon and formally welcomed her. "Duchess Silverwood, welcome. It's an honor to meet you." Upon hearing her full title, Isu was shocked. He thought to himself, "Come to think of it, Hale once said that mages belong to the dukedom." Suddenly, all the memories they shared, the fun times, the teasing, the insults they threw at each other came rushing back. He silently hoped that Hyeon would forgive him for his ignorance and not kill him. After all, dukes were second only to the king, and they have the power to send forces into battle and aid the king himself. Realizing this, Eo is truly terrified of his past mistakes and wonders what Hyeon will do to him after this. After the arrival of Baron Bloom and Duchess Silverwood at the Maiden Castle, the warm welcome by the Count himself was a delightful treat and a blessing to Haiyan. The narrator gives us information on the dukes and their heritage. A mage can only have one child by fate. Once one of the elven parents passes away, the title is inherited by their child. Wealth, estate, and fortress are not of importance to a mage. Nothing matters more than their bloodline. Haiyan had a gloomy look and spoke in a soft voice to the Count. "Did father pass away?" The Count replied with a sad and polite tone. "Yes, he passed away due to old age a while ago, my lady. I also attended his funeral." From the Count's expression, Haiyan could sense the truth. Deep anger brewed inside her and she spoke through gritted teeth. "What about those people?" The Count understood her fury and pain. "They purchased a mansion with the inheritance in a Romanian city," he said calmly. Her anger didn't subside, and her blood kept boiling because of what the witch had done to her family. She thanked the Count for informing her. He bowed graciously and welcomed the Duchess, but a doubt crept into his mind, and he humbly asked, "No problem, my lady, but may I ask, how are you acquainted with Baron Bloom?" Haiyan replied coldly while masking her anger. "Let's just say we had a connection." She then calmed down a bit and asked politely, "Speaking of which, may I ask you a favor?" The Count agreed. "Sure, what is it?" Haiyan replied, "I would like to stay here with Baron Bloom while he's here. Also, I would appreciate it if you could keep my identity a secret." The Count agreed and swore to keep her identity a secret. She then asked whether he knew about her abilities, to which the Count responded affirmatively. "Of course, I'm very well aware, my lady." She nodded. "I'll be glad to assist you in time." After saying this, she excused herself and left the Count's room. After her departure, the Count got excited and screamed in joy. "This is my chance." He then called out for his butler, who arrived quickly. The Count immediately ordered him, "Call all of my sons, it's an emergency." Meanwhile, Rose was very angry and irritated by Haiyan. We see her throwing tantrums like a small, silly child, letting out her anger on the pillows. She screamed in frustration, "I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I can't believe that girl stubborn as wood is a mage, let alone a duchess." While grinding her teeth on the bedsheets, she muttered angrily, "A duchess." The maid who was watching her throw tantrums asked her to calm down and listen, which Rose eventually did. She was shocked to hear that the Count had called all of his sons back. Suddenly a dangerous glint flashed in Rose's eyes and she spoke in a mischievous tone. "What a brilliant idea. I should be nice to the Duchess." The maid, a bit scared for Haiyan, spoke in a calming voice. "I believe she wants to be addressed as Lady Haiyan, not Duchess." We then see Rose dancing and getting excited. The reason, "If that's the case, I guess Dad won't bother with my marriage matters for a while, right? I'm free." She kept jumping and dancing with delight. Meanwhile, Haiyan had left her elven form and approached Isu with a demanding expression. "Hand over the bread." Isu, exhausted from the long journey and wanting to rest, wasn't able to do so thanks to Haiyan's demands. He asked her to wait in her room. He then approached Rose and asked for permission to use the kitchen. She replied bluntly, "No." Yasu was confused and asked for the reason. She explained, "The servants will be punished for not doing their job properly. Besides, a noble going in and out will only disturb them." Realizing Asu was getting sad and disappointed, she added cheerfully, "However, we do have an extra kitchen. You can use that one." Iju was relieved to hear the good news. Realizing he was going to make something, Rose asked with sparkly eyes and drooling lips, excited, "What are you going to make this time?" Seeing her excited like a small child, Iju couldn't help but chuckle. In a nervous tone he replied, "First, could you please prepare the ingredients for me?" Acting like an obedient child, Rose agreed and quickly brought him a few ingredients with which he could make bread for Haiyan, as per their agreement. "Will this do?" she asked. After analyzing the ingredients, Isu nodded and said in an energetic tone, "Perfect. I'll get them made right away." We then see Izayatri preparing to bake the most delicious bread. He whisked poured batter into small baking cups, and placed other ingredients. After baking them to a golden brown, the kitchen filled with a delicious scent that escaped into the castle, letting everyone know something tasty was being made. After the bread had cooled, we see Rose hungry and drooling, ask eagerly, "Is it ready? Can I have a bite?" Isu agreed but told her to leave some for Hyan. She agreed, took a piece, and bit into it. A blast of flavors exploded in her mouth, making her shriek and grin like a child who had just tasted something incredible. "How is it?" Isu asked. "Jumping in the air," she replied. "It's delicious." Her jumping and shrieking gave Isu a strange sense of déjà vu. He then took the remaining 2 pieces and said warmly, "I'll take these 2 to Hyan." Rose replied, "She's probably in the living room. I'll tell the servants to deliver them to her." Just then, a young and passionate man entered the private kitchen and introduced himself. "Pardon me, Baron Bloom. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Lucas." Isu greeted him. Lucas then said, "Let me guide you to your room." After walking for a while, they reached Isu's room and entered. Lucas was smiling and replied energetically, yet remained polite. "It's an honor to serve you, sir." Seeing his enthusiasm, Isu was a bit taken aback. When Lucas mentioned helping him change his clothes, it made Isu a bit uncomfortable. He replied, "I can do that. Thanks." After removing his old clothes, he wore the suit brought to him by Lucas. The fitting was amazing. It suited him very, very well. As he went downstairs to meet Rose, she was a bit surprised and said in a shocked tone, "Oh my Isu, that outfit really makes you look like a noble." She circled around at Isu, admiring his noble look, clearly impressed by how good he looked in it. Seeing this chaos, Isu felt a bit uncomfortable and out of place. Noticing Isu's discomfort, the maid spoke up, "My lady, please show some respect." As the chaotic Rose continued analyzing Isu, we see Hyan enter in a beautiful purple dress with a sparkling brooch on her neck. This dress actually elevated her beauty, making her look even more like royalty. After being called out by Hyan, both of them calmed down to saying Biu was in shock at how beautiful Hyan looked. Rose felt like Hyan was showing off a little and said in a nonchalant manner, "Come on, it's not that impressive." Isu walked toward Hyan and bowed gently to show his respect. He then asked her politely, "Did you enjoy the bread?" To that Hyan replied, "Wasn't too bad." Isu chuckled and replied, "Your plate says otherwise." Rose popped out of nowhere and became overly polite to Hyan, saying, "You sure seem to be enjoying your meal for someone who said it's not too bad." Irritated by her overly polite manner, Hyan replied with slight annoyance, "Please mind your own business, Lady Jekro." It was clear that Rose was trying to create some kind of blunder. Hakan knew she was being overly polite because she needed something or stood to gain from it. The sparks were flying between the 2 ladies and it made Isu nervous. He quickly stepped in and pulled them apart. Rose then calmed down and spoke in a polite tone. "I noticed that you're very close with Isu. How about we do the same, Lady Hyan?" After analyzing and understanding her demeanor, Hyan replied, "As you wish." Somehow her cold reply made Rose angry and she was ready to fight but calmed down. Still, she was annoyed with Isu for not breaking the ice between them. Isu found himself in a difficult situation where he couldn't run or hide from the tension. After this banter, Rose thought for a moment and then said, "Come to think of it, you need to take your etiquette training, right?" Isu nodded and agreed with her. He was excited and nervous about these lessons. After Rose mentioned Isu's training, Lucas took Isu to a room and asked him to wait for the instructor to arrive. Feeling giddy and excited, Isu thought, "Am I finally becoming a noble?" A sense of relief washed over him as he recalled his past memories. "It's already been a year since I came to this world, but I still can't believe it. Whether it's due to greed or just a challenge, I can always return if it doesn't work out." We see him overthinking his choices and creating a plan in case things go wrong, but still he didn't give up. He promised himself to fulfill his goals and work harder for a better life in this new world. He also felt a different kind of relief, thinking, if everything works out fine, I'll be a noble, and if I fall in love with someone and marry her, then maybe I'll have kids. I could settle here. That realization hit him. After all, this world could be my home, my new family, not Seoul. As Ieyasu was deep in thought, he was interrupted by Lucas. "Sir, your instructor is here," Izu called out. "Let him in." After his approval, a handsome man in his mid-50s entered and introduced himself. "Allow me to introduce myself, Baron Bloom. I'm Bassett, and I'll be in charge of your etiquette training." As he made his announcement, his formal appearance, stance, and even manner of speaking clearly showed how well-trained he was. Some might even mistake him for royalty. Flabbergasted by the instructor's demeanor, Izu smiled and replied warmly, "Pleased to meet you." Once the greetings were over, Bassett began preparing a few things for Ieyasu to learn proper manners. He said, "Then we will begin right away. Please take a seat at the dining table." After giving clear instructions, he turned to the maids and asked them to place the utensils and glasses on the table for Ieyasu's training. Noticing the maids placing different and uniquely designed cutlery, Isu was shocked by how fancy these utensils were, ones used by the aristocrats. As he curiously played with a fork, Bassett spoke up in a stern yet polite tone. "Just now you have committed 3 critical mistakes, sir." The sudden appearance and voice of the instructor made Izu jump a little. He looked confused, unsure of what he had done wrong. Bassett then began lecturing Isu on tableware etiquette. First, touching the tableware without washing your hands goes against etiquette. Second, nobles do not exclaim. Izu was feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the instructions and rules. He absent-mindedly picked up the fork again and started playing with it. Bassett noticed and said, "Third, leaning down to look at your fork is considered disgraceful for a noble." "You've got to be kidding me," Isu muttered. Bassett noticed the tone in Izu's dazed look. He then spoke up, "Even the words you just uttered are not standard language, so please refrain from using them." After making his point, Bassett then lectured Isu on table manners. Before taking food from the central plate, you must always wash your hands. After wiping the moisture on the tablecloth, proceed to place the food on the plate in front of you. Also, placing your elbows on the table is against proper etiquette. All these rules and etiquette overwhelmed Isu. His mind went blank and pulled him into darkness, as his brain couldn't memorize all the rules. Feeling way too overwhelmed, he finally spoke up in a frustrated tone. "Hold on. How do you expect me to memorize all of that at once?" Bassett remained calm, completely opposite to Ieyasu's flustered state, and responded in a gentle tone, "Don't worry, sir. We're going to repeat it 10 times until you learn it by heart." After the training classes, Isu's mind felt heavy with information. He looked completely drained, like the life had been sucked out of him. He silently wished for some sugar or sweets to recharge his brain energy. Noticing that it was time for the end of Ieyasu's training, Rose came to visit him. She was completely shocked and confused to find Ieyasu tired and spent. Noticing Rose rubbing her eyes, Ieyasu quickly sat up, straightened his clothes and sat magnificently on the couch. He then spoke with such elegance that it made Rose unsure if it was really him. Seeing her confused look and then realizing she hadn't recognized him, he said his name and spoke in a formal tone, masking his tiredness. "Did you take a good look around with Hyeon?" Rose replied warmly. "Hyeon needed some rest halfway, so it took us a while." As she completed her sentence, Hyeon arrived at the training room with such elegance that it felt like spring had arrived. She replied to Rose in a cold yet polite manner. "How inconsiderate. I traveled a long way, so it's obvious I needed a good rest." Feeling irritated by her reply, Rose snapped back, "You talk as if we begged you to come." Following this exchange, the girls grew visibly angry. Fury filled their eyes and it seemed like they could fight at any moment, but Ieyasu quickly interrupted them and calmed them down to avoid a conflict. Noticing the uneasy tension between the girls, Izu got a brilliant idea. "All right. Have you girls tried creme brulee?" Hearing the unfamiliar name, the girls both looked confused and spoke at the same time. "Creme brulee?" Understanding their confusion, Izu began explaining with passion. "Yep, it's a simple custard cream dessert with sugar on top." He then added, "I'll make one for both of you." A doubt crept into his mind and he asked, "By the way, are there any pastry chefs or pâtissiers here? How can you not know creme brulee?" The girls were still completely confused by what he was talking about. Rose then asked in a cold tone, "Pastry chef?" as in an expert in making pastries? Hyen added, equally cold. We don't call someone who makes inedible things a skilled person. Noticing their cold expressions and lack of exposure to such delicacies, Yasu finally understood why these girls hadn't heard of creme brulee. The ingredients were prepared by the humble maids and butlers of the Meda family. Izio then started cooking the dessert while explaining the process. First, we're going to make the base cream with egg yolks, then scrape the vanilla bean seeds off the pod and add them to the milk. He then held up a vanilla bean and explained, "This is called a vanilla bean. You'll be surprised how useful it can be. You can make money by selling it as syrup or jam, you know?" Listening to Isu explain the different uses of the vanilla bean, Rose was taken aback and asked in a surprised tone, "How do you know all this stuff?" Scoffing slightly, Heian added with a proud expression, "Iyo is the mage of bread, he knows everything." Rose looked confused and said in a suspicious tone, "Rich." She then turned to Heian with a scary look and asked in a deep, intimidating voice, "Don't tell me Isu made bread for you." Isu was caught now and he feared for his life. Rose then spoke up with a proud smile and tone full of pride, "I bet you didn't know he made me potato pancakes last time." Heian coldly replied, "I didn't like that." This small argument was enough to reignite their anger. The girls glared at each other while Io stayed frozen, scared to intervene, fearing they might take their anger out on him. Suddenly Rose shouted, "Isu, don't just stand there. Start making something, will you?" Seeing the anger in her clenched fists turning white, Isu agreed quickly and focused on his custard cream. After the custard cream was done, he showed it to the ladies. It was thick, yellow, and smelled absolutely delicious. Both of them were drooling, curious to taste it. Eventually, curiosity got the better of them and they started poking the custard. It was springy and wobbly. Their fingers got a little covered in custard, and they licked it off. Rose exclaimed, "This is super tasty." The maid sighed helplessly as Rose showed her childish side. Isu then told them he needed to cool it. Knowing he might need ice, Rose ordered her maid, "Lucy, could you bring us some ice?" The maid nodded and prepared to go fetch the ice. Isu was shocked to find that the Midlife family had ice and asked about it. Rose nodded and explained, "Yes, we do. We have a separate ice storage. It should last till May. We shave it to make ice desserts." Isu wondered whether their way of using ice was similar to the shaved ice, with toppings found in his home world. As the maid arrived with a bowl full of ice, Isu thanked her and placed the custard bowl over the ice bowl to cool it. There were some egg whites left, and Ayasu thought of using them. An idea struck him and he said, "With leftover egg whites we can make meringue cookies." He then had a superb idea that would make the task easier and let the girls vent their frustration. He announced, "How about Heian and Rose do a meringue whisking race? All you have to do is whisk the egg whites with all your might. I'll pour in the sugar from time to time." The girls agreed. Each received a bowl filled with egg whites. Rose had a determined to win look on her face. As Ayasu counted down to start the race, Rose was pumped up, whisking with immense energy. Meanwhile, Heian, being clever, used her magic to assist herself. Izu was happy to see both girls giving their best. He said softly, "Let me know once the mix gets foamy. I'll add the sugar then." After whisking for a while, Rose peeked at Heian and noticed her using magic. Furious, she shouted in an irritated tone, "Hey, no magic, that's cheating." Heian replied coldly, "I'm just using my abilities." This angered Rose even more and raised her competitive spirit. Meanwhile, Isu was glad that his workload was reduced. After a long effort from the girls, the meringue was finally done. It was fluffy and white like a cloud and held its peaks perfectly. Setting her whisk down, Rose said with a proud grin and a fake tired look, "No matter how you look at it, I'm the winner." Heian, shocked by Rose's stamina, replied in a sarcastic tone, "You could whisk a few more bowls with that energy of yours." The comment reignited Rose's competitive spirit, and she glared at Heian. Sparks flew between them and it looked like a fight could break out at any moment. Isu quickly stepped in. "Please, calm down, both of you." Once they were calm, Isu began the next step. Now I'm going to squeeze this meringue into a piping bag. He gracefully filled the bag and piped out the meringue in a beautiful rosebud shape. Both girls were intrigued and rushed over to ask if they could try. They each took a turn placing meringue onto the baking sheet. There was excitement and a sense of pride on their faces for what they had accomplished. Isu picked up the baking tray and smiled brightly. Now we need to bake it in the oven at low heat. An old man in a white uniform, the head chef, stood near the oven. Isu gently asked, "Can I put you in charge of this?" The chef replied with a polite smile, "Yes, you can count on me, sir." As the tray baked under the chef's care, Rose pulled Isu and said in a warm, childish tone, "Come on, let's quickly check on the creme brulee we made earlier." Noticing her excitement, Isu calmed her down, then took the chilled custard out and placed it into a classy container. It looked like an expensive, restaurant-quality dish. Rose and Hyen were excited, and Rose asked Isu for permission to eat it. Isu smiled and replied, "No." He thought to himself that when it came to tasty food, these girls acted like twins. Then he explained the main part of the dessert. "We need to sprinkle sugar on top and use fire." Speaking of fire, he muttered to himself, "In this world I don't have a blowtorch." He scurried around the kitchen, searching for something useful, and finally found a matchbox. Using it, he carefully melted the sugar. As it caramelized, it formed a beautiful brown coating over the custard, giving it a delicious aromatic appearance. Looking at the finished product they had all worked on, Rose stared at Isu with hungry eyes and a drooling mouth. "Now can we dig in already?" she asked. Seeing her cute reaction made Io chuckle a little. Just then, a maid called out to Rose with a sigh, "How about we eat this properly in the drawing room, my lady?" Rose nodded and agreed. They all headed to the drawing room to enjoy the delicious dessert. Once seated, each took a cup filled with custard and caramelized sugar. Isu guided them. "Crack the caramelized sugar with your spoon, then scoop it up with the cream." Watching this marvelous sight, everyone was shocked and delighted. They eagerly followed Isu's instructions. When Rose took the first bite, her mouth tingled with the sweet sensation. The custard and sugar overwhelmed her taste buds in the best way. Her eyes sparkled, and a red hue appeared on her cheeks as she savored the taste. She suddenly sprang up from the couch and exclaimed, "I should have hired you as our chef before you became a baron." Seeing her so excited and close to him, Isu laughed nervously, but then Rose turned a little angry and began shaking Isu violently while yelling in frustration, "What's wrong with our family's pâtissier? What's wrong with our family's pâtissier? Why can't they come up with something like this?" Meanwhile, Hyen silently enjoyed her dessert with a calm smile. She enjoyed her share of dessert and was delighted by the delicious taste of creme brulee. As Rose calmed down and settled in, Hyen spoke up nervously, "There's plenty of leftover custard. Should we share it around?" Rose found Isu's idea good and responded with a determined look, "Sounds good. Everyone must have a taste of this, including that pâtissier of ours." The pâtissier, who was still in the kitchen, suddenly felt a cold shiver, making him scared and nervous. Isu then turned to Hyen and asked nervously, "How was it, Hyen? Did you like it?" Hyen replied with a calm demeanor, "It wasn't bad." Even though she said it in a nonchalant manner, Isu noticed her empty cup and gave her a warm smile. Rose then called out to her maid, "Lucy, tell the pâtissier to bring the cookies Isu asked him to bake earlier." Lucy agreed and carried out the order. After a while, the cookies were brought out. They were light golden in color and looked extremely fluffy like clouds, giving them a delicious and delightful appearance. Isu then explained, "You can consider these simple sugar cookies. They go particularly well with herb tea." Hearing his explanation and recommendation, the girls were eager to try them. They each took one cookie and ate it in one bite. As they bit into the cookies, it felt like an electric current ran down their spines. Suddenly they both seemed genuinely happy. It appeared that their animosity toward each other had softened, and they began to get along. Rose smiled brightly and said, "From now on this kitchen belongs to Isu. Give him all the ingredients he asks for." The maid agreed, though she felt a bit weirded out by Rose's unusually bright smile and cheerful tone. Rose then turned sharply to the pâtissier and said in a cold tone, "And you, did you write down the recipe?" The pâtissier nervously shook his head. Rose repeated coldly, "What are you waiting for? Jot it down already." He nodded eagerly and began writing. He felt that if he didn't, he might be at risk of being fired. Isu, feeling a bit awkward, laughed softly to hide his self-embarrassment. He also felt genuinely bad for the pâtissier. Suddenly Isu thought to himself, "Come to think of it, I don't have any problem reading or speaking their language, but I still don't know how to write it." He turned to the pâtissier and reassured him, "Tell me the recipe again later." The pâtissier cried tears of relief and thanked Isu repeatedly. Meanwhile, the maid had taken a few servings of the crème brûlée to the count and countess. We see them seated together at a table admiring the beautiful dessert made by Isu. The countess spoke with curiosity. "This dessert called crème brûlée is really delicious, isn't it?" The count replied thoughtfully after taking a bite, "It's my first time trying it, and it tastes absolutely delightful." The countess then took a spoonful and analyzed the flavor. She noticed a mild yet sweet taste that was distinct from milk, sugar, or eggs. She commented, "It has a peculiar aroma. I wonder what it is." The count replied gently, "I heard he used the vanilla beans we brought in a while ago." The countess responded, "We should make a note to keep some in the pantry." The count laughed softly and agreed. They both continued enjoying the dessert and shared a few laughs together. As they were in the middle of their conversation, their butler knocked at the door. The count allowed him to enter. The butler bowed gently and said, "I came with news of the young masters, my lord. Currently, the oldest master is traveling the southern region. He has recently become captivated by wine and is studying the art of winemaking. As for the youngest master, who has entered the royal palace—" Before the butler could finish, the count interrupted with a sigh, "Enough of that for now. Just tell me how Jaja is doing." The butler laughed nervously and then spoke, "Well, my lord, you see." He began explaining the incidents involving Rose and Hyan and the banter between them. This was enough to worry both the count and countess. The countess sighed and said, "I hope she hasn't torn out the duchess's hair." The butler reassured her, "Rest assured, madame. Thankfully, it's nothing to that extent. Lady Jasha has decided to become friends with the Duchess and Baron Bloom, disregarding all formalities." The Count and Countess laughed and agreed that this was for the best, for both Rose and the family. She had always been the most notorious troublemaker and mischievous individual in the family. "It is a bit suspicious that she became friends with Hyan," the Countess added. "But in the end, this might help us learn more about her and make our family stand out stronger." Days passed, and Isu's training for nobility continued. His exhausting and hellish routine never ended. One day, Isu was late for an important meeting. Rose and Hyan were dressed elegantly, and both appeared irritated by his delay. Rose spoke up in an annoyed tone, "What took you so long?" Hyan followed with a cold, flat tone, "Which country considers being late for an appointment to be good manners?" Isu laughed nervously and replied, "Sorry, I had some business to take care of." The real reason for his delay, however, was his upset stomach. He regretted not bringing his daily probiotics. As Isu caught his breath, he noticed Hyan wearing the dress he had bought for her during their visit to Pussing City. Hyan flicked her hair and said, back over her shoulders, she said, "I like this outfit, it's comfortable." She then added in an irritated tone, "Dresses here are so tight around the waist, it feels suffocating. I can't stand it." Listening to Hyan say this, Rose was shocked and then said, "You can easily untie the waistband when the maids are away." She then showed her in an elegant manner how she untied the waistband around her waist. Rah! Hyan agreed and decided to do that in the future. Meanwhile, Rose's maid was in shock and flinched in terror at this sight. As they traveled out of Medic City, the scenery that was seen by Isu was magnificent and beautiful. The air that he felt on his face, the leaves fluttering in the air, and the river flowing around the city were all too bewitching to him. Isu then asked Rose in a surprised tone, "Wow, is that a river?" Rose smiled and said in a gentle voice, "Yep, it's the Midi River." This flowing water and the air were all too stunning for Isu, and he thought it must be awesome to be rich enough to name a river and a city after your family name. Then Isu got a wild idea that if Hyun helped him and cleared a path for his future estate, then the river that would flow there would be named Bloom River. Iso then mesmerized the scenery and admired the beauty of nature. After a while he asked Rose in a happy tone, "Then there must be a lot of fish over there, right?" Rose was a bit confused by his happy demeanor and said in a flat tone, "I heard there are hardly any." This sentence was enough to burst the dreamy bubble of Isu. He thought if the river had fish, then he would go fishing and try making amazing dishes. He then asked the reason for the decline in fish. Rose then said with a hint of sadness, "Yeah, these days even if you farm it's a poor harvest, so we're just expanding the farm." Iso was overwhelmed by this information and had a doubt, but before saying anything he thought, raising livestock in the farm up there and cultivating bee crops in the farm down there, this is an amazing idea. He then spoke his mind. "Then do you also make cheese?" Rose nodded and said, "Of course. If there's a place you'd like to explore on your own, feel free to look around. We'll go back and wait for you." Iso was confused by Rose's words and asked her in a confused tone, "Oh, can I do that?" Both Hyun and Rose had a mischievous glint in their eyes and agreed, letting him go out and explore the city. Then they both opened the door of the carriage, looked around to stall time, and as they found the horses, they got up on them and started running away. The servants of the medic family were in shock and terror when the girls started running away. They followed after them, really worried. Rose waved at Iso and said, "Then enjoy." Isu then guided the chauffeur to take him into the town, and he observed people making cheese. He thought, looks like a lot of people are making cheese, since it's spring. He was mesmerized by the method they used to make cheese, and later he found a boy sitting on the footpath. He ordered the chauffeur to halt, and then called out to the boy, "Hey kid, come here for a sec." The boy felt he was called and walked nervously to the carriage, speaking in a shaky voice. "Do you need anything, sir?" Noticing the boy's nervousness and scared look, Isu rummaged in his bag and took out the manga cookies, handing them to him. The boy nervously took the cookies and admired their shape before eating them. His eyes shone with a bright sparkle and he spoke in a grateful tone, "This is delicious, sir." "Thank you." Isu smiled and spoke with a warm tone. "I'm glad you like it. Now can I ask you a question?" He then asked the boy, pointing his finger over to the other wagons present there. "Where are those wagons over there going?" The boy understood what Isu was talking about and then spoke up. "They're transporting cheese to the less fermentation chamber." Isu then glanced at the wagons with an intense look, making the boy feel scared. After thinking for some time, Isu spoke in an intense tone, which the boy mistook for anger. "You know the way that comes out after making cheese, right? Do you guys make ricotta cheese with that?" Isu waited for the boy to understand his question, and the boy finally spoke. "Yes, sir, the Lord has approved it too." The boy was so scared that his voice was shaky and his face was turning white due to fear. This made Isu realize that he was being a bit harsh on the kid, so he immediately softened up and smiled at him while saying, "It's okay, I'm not trying to scold you. When you make ricotta cheese, do you add lemon juice and heat it?" The boy relaxed a bit and answered, "Yes, we do." Isu nodded and gave the boy a warm smile. Then he told the chauffeur to take him back to Medi Castle, as there was now an amazing idea running in his mind and he wanted to try it out later. Isu rushed to the kitchen and made an amazing cooling drink, serving it to the Count and his family. They were confused by the white drink in front of them, and the Count spoke up in a suspicious tone. "Are you suggesting that this is the solution to the harvest issues?" Isu smiled and laughed nervously before saying, "It might not be perfect, but it seems like it could provide some help. From what I heard from Jaja, there are no fish in the lake and the harvest is poor for crops as well." The Count understood what he was trying to say, but still a doubt crossed his mind and he said, "Yes, she's right, but how does this help with that?" Isu nodded and said in a polite and formal tone, "I'll explain later, sir." He then said with a bright smile, "But please try it." First, the Count and his family nodded and understood his intentions. Without giving it much thought, they tried the drink in front of them. Rose finished her glass of the drink and said with an exaggerated happy sigh, "This is my first time tasting it. It's tangy and sweet." The Countess agreed with her daughter's thoughts and said, "Yes, I enjoyed it too. What is this made of?" Isu listened to the question and after giving it some thought said, normally when we make ricotta cheese we add lemon juice to the whey. But this time I added milk instead. Depending on your preference you can also add sugar or fruit. After recollecting his experience while roaming around the village, he continued, while exploring the village I saw people making ricotta cheese. To make that you need lemon juice. He paused to let the impact of his words sink into their minds before saying, it seems that the lemon juice flowing from there is entering the farmland and the lake, causing contamination. But if we use the whey to make lassi then there's no need to use lemon juice. It can solve the harvest issues. However, he also added while laughing nervously and scratching his side. However, we can't just stop the demand for cheese, and the cost of milk is cheap. The first one to speak after Isu's explanation was Rose. She said in an understanding manner, don't worry, we'll provide all the milk you want. Father, how about we provide a small portion of fermented cheese to the ranchers? She then added while smiling, it may not be ricotta cheese but at least the quality is enough to make it work. The Countess nodded and agreed with her daughter's idea, saying, even if we lose profit from cheese, we can make that up once the harvest thrives. Isu was shocked to see how understanding the Medi family was and realized why they were so respected by the people living in their city. The Countess then interrupted Isu by saying, by the way, you managed to find both the cause of the poor harvest and its solution. No wonder Raja praised you so much. She then added while smiling, but her words weren't as sweet as she was. It looks like it wasn't a complete lie. This side of the Countess made both Rose and the Count speechless and confused by her behavior. Realizing their faces, the Countess laughed softly while saying, what's wrong? If you can say it, I can say it too. Rose was concerned and decided to use her words appropriately from there on out. Isu heard it and took it like a champ, understanding where Rose got her rough personality and character from. After the discussion between the family and the quick decisions taken by the Medi family, Isu was once again shown their wonders, and his respect for them grew even more. Isu then spoke up with a kind voice, providing milk and cheese for free must have been a difficult decision. I can see why the people respect your family so much. The Countess smiled warmly at Isu and then spoke. Oh please, it's nothing, we're all doing it for our own good. Isu understood the meaning and felt relieved that the family he got acquainted with were good people and respected by everyone. Isu then thought to himself, I'm not sure if it's money that's making them generous, or if it's their generosity that's bringing them money. But anyway, the Medi family understands the virtue of giving. The Medi family's selflessness and the thought of putting people before themselves made Isu feel warm-hearted. He smiled and felt happy. In a faraway land, a beautiful castle had a room decorated with lots of luxurious paintings, ornaments, and decorations. In the living room, a few ladies were gossiping about something. All of them looked noble and had a prestigious aura circulating around them. Suddenly, a conversation popped up. Say, I heard that there will be an international market in Medici City. Is that correct? They all nodded and gossiped amongst each other. I heard the royal family approved of it for the first time. Another woman spoke up. It's their first participation, so I wonder how it will go. A lady who was heavily dressed spoke up in a very controlling demeanor. Surely not everyone is planning to go, right? The rest of the women trembled in fear and said while sweating due to their nervousness and fear, of course not, Lady Pitt. Another woman joined in. Why would we even go there? We don't fit in with a family that's all about money and lacks culture. After this heated conversation, a noble woman dressed in a brown elegant gown said, by the way, have you heard? I heard that the Medi family is expanding their farm again. This time, they continue to monopolize the wool without any conscience, causing harm to the Pitt family. She said this to praise Lady Pitt, but she didn't realize that instead of making Lady Pitt happy, she made her angry and was now being glared at. Gathering her courage, she spoke in a shaky voice, but there's a rumor going around that the Duke will make an appearance at that event. This rumor made Lady Pitt really interested in the festival, and the other woman who heard it asked, is that true? The woman sitting beside her replied, I doubt it, my lady. I'm sure it's just a baseless rumor spread in case the Count's family rejects the invitation. The narrator explained, seeing the Mage family is rare. unless it's an official event organized by the royal family, may just stay out of sight unless their presence is mandatory, such as at royal ceremonies, events or occasions where their abilities are needed. That's why nobles, whenever they get the chance, always seek to establish a connection with the mage family. A few ladies were having a heated argument about whether this rumor might be true or not, and a few agreed that if it was true then they should attend the festival whether they wanted to or not. Lady Pitt then clicked her tongue and spoke in an irritated tone. Well, I'm not too sure about that. Is it not a bit too much to travel all the way there based solely on rumors? After this, the room went silent and everyone had their doubts about whether to go or not. One lady spoke up with a trembling voice. Well, we're not going there because we like that family, you know. If the rumors are true, it's a great opportunity to form a connection with the Count's family. And if not, we can throw cold water on the Miyashi family. Couldn't we? Everyone agreed to it, and tried to convince Lady Pitt. She herself was giving it a long thought, thinking about her vengeance and the mockery they faced due to the Mishi family. She then smirked after giving it some thought, thinking, those Mishi bastards, how dare they claim to support the commoners and buy wool at exorbitant prices, making a mockery of our family. This was the start of something bad to happen. Lady Pitt and her anger were on the brink of bursting onto the Medici family. Back in Medici City, it was chaos and confusion amongst the workers. Their rushing footsteps and the loud orders from Rose showed how important this upcoming festival was. Rose ordered, "This dish lacks originality. The design is too old-fashioned. Please pay a bit more attention to the interior decor. You two, you're in charge of this area." The bustling and rushing sounds never died down, and the air of nervousness and excitement remained. Isu, who was an outsider, saw the people in a frenzy and smiled at them warmly to cheer them up. That's when he felt a tap on his shoulder by Rose. He turned to her and she said, "Hey Isu, can I have a word with you?" Isu agreed, and they both went out to the balcony, a bit far away from the hectic frenzy in the castle. As they walked out in the cool breeze, Isu noticed Rose's gloominess. To cheer her up, he spoke in a warm tone. "I heard the international market is opening in your county this time. I bet you attended a lot of the previous ones that were held by other families, right?" Rose was nervous and gloomy. She lacked her usual mischievous energy and spoke in a serious tone. "A few times when I was a kid." Isu asked her why she doesn't go now. She then replied, "I always left feeling bad every time I went." Even though she was scared and nervous for this festival, she replied while smiling, "Nevertheless, since it's being held by our family this time, I'm trying to prepare diligently. It means our family has received approval from the royal family." She then had an idea and asked Isu, "Is there any way you could try to persuade Haron a bit?" Isu was confused and couldn't understand why she was so insistent on persuading Hien. Noticing the confused look on Isu, she explained, "One mage, we only need one mage at the banquet. It'll shut that lousy mouth of theirs." It was clear Rose was desperate and bursting with anger and vengeance for what their family had to go through. Isu understood why Rose wanted Hien to come to the festival. After giving it some thought, he said, "Since that's really up to her to decide, why don't you ask her nicely?" Rose understood, but a doubt crept into her mind and she asked Isu, "But I thought you two were friends." Isu nodded and understood her desperation, but he spoke up in a warm and understanding tone, "But this is your family's matter." Rose then chuckled and admitted that if she wanted Hien to come she had to do it herself. But she was a little angry at Isu and said while laughing, "I should instruct the instructors to give you more rigorous training." This was enough to crumble Isu and make him scatter on the floor like a pile of dust. Rose did what she said, and the instructor went full hard on Isu, drilling him with more and more lectures and classes on nobility. As Isu arrived at his room after the instructor's hard regiment, he flopped on the bed and growled like a whining child. According to him, the instructor was like a devil. Bazette made him go through a hellish regiment of nobility. Isu, tired from the regiment, spoke to himself in a whining tone. "Ja, is this how you get your revenge? I can't keep up with it anymore." After this hellish class, he was starving and missed his world's comforting food, grilled pork belly and kimchi. As he was reminiscing about it, He flopped up from the bed and decided to head to Rodan right away. He ordered Lucas to prepare a carriage for him and said that they were traveling back to Rodan. After a long and hard journey, they reached Rodan. It still looked beautiful and had the comforting scent of grass from his first arrival. As he took his first step out of the carriage, he felt nostalgia hit and reminisced about his experiences. Then he turned to Lucas and said, "Take the carriage and go to Rushen. Come pick me up after 3 days." Lucas nodded and did as he was ordered. As he saw Lucas leave, he rushed to his cottage for the portal. As he found the portal, he went through it and reached back to his world. Home. Isu then dressed normally and went down from his apartment onto the street. He cried tears of happiness and relief as he finally made it back home. As he went strolling to find his favorite restaurant, he watched people with happy eyes enjoying themselves and wandering around the city. This made him feel delighted. Later his food arrived and the sparkle in his eyes showed how much he missed Korean food and how long he'd been away from home. Isu then spoke to himself in an excited tone. "It's been so long since I had Korean food." Examining the old familiar dishes and smelling the food made him drool. His shiny eyes and gaping mouth from where the drool fell clearly showed his admiration and desire for the food. Seeing people enjoy their food in the lightened mood due to alcohol and delicious meals was a beautiful scene for him. He then picked up his chopsticks and readied himself to take a bite. As he chewed, the flavors rushed in his mouth, and in his imagination, it was so delicious that he pictured himself waving the national flag of Korea while crying tears of relief and comfort. He spoke in his mind, "It's so delicious, I'm going to cry." While chewing, he sniffled a few tears of appreciation for this tasty meal. He then poured himself a glass of soju, the Korean spirit that is the companion of adults in Korea. Taking the shot filled with alcohol, he was mesmerized by the usual and comforting taste. He let out a satisfying sound as he enjoyed the flavor and nostalgia. He was interrupted by the staff, who served him his pork belly. Isu thanked them and then appreciated the food in front of him. He picked up the belly slices and started grilling them on the hot grill in front of him, enjoying the sizzling sounds and the delicious smell. He then thought, "I'm definitely taking kimchi with me this time." His wide grin and smile showed how happy he was. After grilling the pork belly, it turned golden brown, showing it was cooked perfectly. Isu then carefully placed it on his plate. After admiring this beauty, he blew on it softly and took a bite. There was a wide grin on his face as he then drank a shot of soju. As Isu enjoyed his food and time in the restaurant, he was called out by someone he was acquainted with. "Yo, Isu." Isu then waved back at the man and said, "Hey, what's up?" The man spoke in a happy tone. "How have you been?" Isu thought in his mind, "My former colleague, who I was close to at work." He then gestured for his colleague to sit down and asked with a smile, "Did you just get off work?" The man replied with a tired groan. "Yeah." He felt a bit awkward speaking in his native language, Korean. The man then added, "By the way, why haven't you been responding to my texts lately?" Isu laughed nervously and replied about his reality, "Oh, I was busy traveling." The man understood and asked, "Where did you go?" Isu then poured a glass of soju for his acquaintance. The man guessed his destination, but Isu didn't reply. With a sigh, the man said, "I should have traveled around more before I started work. I'm kind of jealous, man." He then gossiped about the office. "Oh, and if you haven't heard, Park switched to Nan." Isu was shocked and couldn't believe it. Knowing his shocked response, the man added, "Things are so much better without him around." Myershu was surprised that after his exit from the company so much had changed. The man then said excitedly, "Also, our in-house smartphone has been getting good reviews too." Somehow this conversation made Isu realize how left out he felt. He couldn't speak about the world he currently resided in, nor could he fully talk about the world he used to live in, that other world. All of this loneliness and feeling of being left out finally hit him, and he turned silent. The true feeling of being disconnected and not being able to speak openly was eating him from deep within. After being silent for a long time and drinking quietly, he spoke in a flat tone anyway, "If there's no reply, just assume that I'm traveling." The man was energetic and happy to meet Isu after a long time. The genuine smile and happy tone were evident on his face. He then spoke up with a smile. Okay, let me know when you're back. Isu waved back at his friend and then walked back home, his head low and deep in thought, wondering whether what he was doing was okay or not. He reached his apartment, unlocked the door and flopped onto his bed in frustration and tiredness. He groaned into his pillow, turned sideways and spoke up. I'm starting to feel more and more disconnected from this world. He turned in his bed, stared at the ceiling, thinking about something, and then spoke. Come to think of it, I remember they said many nobles will be at the International Market Festival. I want to make use of this opportunity. The empty house, apart from his, felt really weird and sad to Isu, and he was determined to make use of every chance he got in the new world. Then he thought, anyway, since I've already set my mind on becoming a count, the success of this event by the Mishi family will be helpful for me too. He kept staring at the ceiling, thinking and planning his steps to become a count. The loneliness and detachment from his original world were a bit too overwhelming for him. The progress of his company and the changes brought by the transfer of his ex-chief were a bit saddening. After thinking for long about his original world, he shook his head and turned back to focus on his life in the new world. He continued thinking, the current Araman Empire has opened up opportunities for social advancement to wealthy commoners, and I too will walk a similar path so that I am not looked down upon. He then thought for a long time about how he could make his life easier. After a long time thinking, he got an amazing idea: influence. He explained to himself properly, I need to make the Media family an influencer in the Araman Empire. From food and fashion to artifacts, the Media family is already renowned in their field. He then gave this idea some more thought and spoke up. You could say that the trends in the Araman Empire often start with the Median family. He suddenly popped up from the bed, took his laptop, turned it on, and connected it to the internet for research. He thought, with the help of modern knowledge, I can make the Media family an influencer in no time. He then thought of some other ways to make the Media family stronger. After a long time of thinking and trying the trial and error method on his ideas, he also thought, on top of that, I can establish a stronger bond with the Media family as well. Now what to promote to establish the dominance of the Media family's influence? He thought of many ideas and tried rough sketches in his mind, but after this to and fro of ideas, he ended up choosing spices as the base of the Miache family's influence. Cloves, nutmeg, vinegar, and many other spices were his ideas, but he couldn't find the right one. He also thought, since the Miache family already has a hold on pepper, I shouldn't meddle with that. Isu was right, as the Miri family's dominance over the pepper market reigned, and there was no way to overthrow them. After thinking for a long time, he spoke up. How about red pepper powder? Isu's eyes sparked with this idea, and he thought of a plan. I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard to introduce red pepper powder to the villagers. This was a brilliant idea, introducing a new spice and increasing the family's influence. It was a win-win situation for him. Also, it was a small victory because with this introduction he could make kimchi and enjoy it over there. As this was his next step, he sprang up and planned. Alright, let's start packing the things I'll take with me from the kitchen. This was a brilliant idea by Isu. Isu then later broke the fourth wall and talked to us. You see, viewers might be thinking, kimchi? Not again. Well, you're kind of right. We all thought about this too. Why kimchi again? Couldn't he have a better idea? Also then broke the fourth wall again and spoke to us. Once you're in my shoes, you'll find yourself doing the same thing. Well, that was an amazing thing, Isu said. If we were all stuck in his situation, we would also try to make things really close to our hearts available in that other world. After his 3 days in his old world, it was time to go back to the Media city. As soon as he arrived at the Media castle, he was surrounded by the two ladies, Rose and Hayan. Rose spoke in a lecturing tone while being angry at Isu. You skipped classes and ran off to Riran, right? Hayan then added in a cold and furious tone. How do you think you'll become a count by being so lazy like that? Guilty as charged, Isu was in a pinch of trouble. Now being surrounded by these furious and beautiful girls, he was in for deep trouble. He laughed nervously and said, wait. Calm down, you guys. Instead of calming down, the girls got more furious. Rose spoke up with an intimidating tone. Did you eat Maggie's food all by yourself? Hyun added in her nonchalant yet furious tone. Don't tell me you baked bread and ate it all by yourself. This series of questions and glares was too much for Isu, and he knew the trouble he was in. He slowly accepted his fate and gave up on survival. He then noticed the dresses both Hyun and Rose wore. It was a bit odd and a doubt popped up in his mind. To clear it, he asked in a doubtful tone. By the way, I see you two are wearing similar outfits. Have you finally decided to become friends? The girls were a bit confused at first, and then realizing his question, they both gave a disgusted look to him. Rose said in an irritated tone, You nonsense. Hyun was irritated and furious at this comment and said, Watch your mouth. As there was a heated discussion among them, Isu thought this was a great time to run away to his room. Noticing this, Rose and Haeun also ran after him, but they lost sight of him after a while. Isu, who reached his room, was panting and catching his breath. As he caught his breath, he said in a confused tone, When did those two become so close? The sudden closeness of the girls was really confusing to Isu. According to him, they both made a dangerous pair that could make his life hell. After settling down in his room and taking some rest, he activated his storage and said, Anyway, I'll just unpack the stuff I brought. After taking out all of the things he brought from his original world, he started formulating plans on how to make it seem like they were all grown in this world. After a long time of processing and thinking, he came up with various ideas. Let's store the kimchi in the jar I brought over last time, and let's store the red pepper powder and baking powder deep inside a box. After packing the kimchi in the jar and packing the red chili powder in the wooden box, he called out for Lucas. After a short while, Lucas arrived and said in a formal tone, You called for me, sir. After nodding and smiling at Lucas, Iso spoke up in a questioning yet kind tone. Is the Count in his study? Lucas nodded and replied, Yes, he is, sir. Lucas then talked over to the Count's personal butler. The butler understood and knocked before saying, My lord, Baron Bloom is here to see you. The Count lifted his head from the books, and after listening to the butler's announcement, he agreed to let Iso come in. As soon as Isu came in, he gently bowed in front of the Count and spoke up in a formal tone. Good evening, sir. The Count nodded and smiled at him before speaking up in a serious tone. What brings you here, Baron? Isu nodded and smiled at him. After a brief pause, he spoke up with a smile and a confident tone. I'm here to further discuss the solutions for soil acidification caused by the lemon juice. Iso waited for some time to let the Count understand his words. After giving it some thought, the Count spoke up. I see. Please, have a seat. Isu smiled and thanked the Count for his offer. After thinking for a little while, Isu spoke up in a confident tone. The family farmland is currently contaminated with acidic compounds that have seeped in over a long period. Of course, it will gradually improve once the lemon juice stops seeping in, but it will take a long time to recover. Understanding what Isu wanted to say, and imagining the time needed for the soil to recover, made the Count a bit uncomfortable. A doubt crept into his mind. So, do you have a solution to this problem? Isu then took his time before formulating his words. After some time he spoke up. Yes, sir. Pouring lime powder over the land should do the trick. He then added in a questioning tone. Does Ania have lime powder? The Count understood the question and replied with a warm smile. Of course we have plenty, but are you sure it will work? Isu took his time to understand the question and then formed his answer. Yes, it will certainly help. He also added in a warning tone, making sure he had the Count's attention. However, it can be dangerous if it comes into contact with humans or animals, so it needs to be handled with care. The Count smiled at him and reassured him by saying, Rest assured, Baron, my people have used lime powder before. I'll leave the task to those who are familiar with the material. After analyzing his answer, Isu nodded and appreciated the Count for his brilliant thinking. The Count was happy with Isu and his solutions. He was genuinely happy and felt indebted to him. After spending some time thinking about this brilliant idea introduced by Isu, he smirked and then asked Isu in a warm and gentle tone, Have you found a suitable land for your estate yet, Baron Bloom? Isu laughed nervously and said in an embarrassed tone, Not yet, sir. Besides, it's only been a month since I received my title. The Count chuckled and felt a bit struck by this cute behavior from Isu. After relaxing, he spoke up with a light chuckle. Excellent. Would it be all right if I find a suitable land for you then? Iso was a bit taken aback by this kind gesture and then spoke in a shaky voice. I would really appreciate that, sir. This was kind of weird for him, and he thought to himself, he's being very nice to me for some reason. This was very kind of the Count, and Iso was really happy that the Count wished to help him. The Count smiled and spoke in a warm and gentle tone. Splendid. Let's talk again soon then. Isu nodded and replied, Of course. Thank you, sir. He then got up from the couch, bowed gently in front of the Count and excused himself out. Later, he was called out by Rose and Hyan for a conversation. He gave them a visit in the living room, only to find Rose in a very intimidating posture. A bit intimidated by Rose, Iso spoke up in a bubbly tone. What's with that look? Do you have something to tell me? Rose then let out a sigh of frustration, gathered her intimidating look and said, I need to come up with something spectacular for the International Market Festival so that other nobles won't look down on us. Confused by her demeanor, Iso asked in a confused tone. I thought things were going smoothly. Rose agreed, but replied in a defeated tone, True, but I need something impactful, something that can be a punch in their faces. This sentence alone was enough to clear their doubts. It also showed the conflicts between the Maria family and the Pitt family, a kind of rivalry where they tried their best to make the other family red with embarrassment. Rose was determined to shut the other nobles' mouths and feel victorious, even if just this once. Giving it a long thought on what he could do to impress the other nobles and enhance the reputation of the Meiji family in front of them, Isu came up with a good idea that could impress all of them. Rose was delighted to know this and was eager to hear what his amazing idea was. Isu grinned to himself, got up, and called a maid nearby to provide him with the required ingredients. The maid agreed and started preparing what Isu had asked for. This confused both the girls. Why was he asking for these ingredients? After some time, the maid arrived with the items Isu requested and asked him milk, sugar, salt, vanilla beans, and raspberries. Will that be all? He nodded and thanked the maid for her hard work. Noticing the ingredients in front of them, Rose spoke up. Are you thinking of making a nice dessert? Isu was a bit taken aback and was confused by what she was saying. He asked her, What's that? Noticing his confused look, Rose explained, We have ice desserts here too, by the way. This intrigued Asu's interest, and he asked, How do you make it? Maybe this was a new dessert he never thought of, and he was excited to know about it. Rose, understanding his question, replied, We crush the ice finely and then mix it with fruit or honey. Hearing this, Asu thought of something resembling this exact same dish and thought to himself, Sounds similar to shaved ice with toppings back home. This was interesting, and he wanted to know more, so he asked Hyan, Have you tried it too? Hyan replied with a strong no, as that didn't suit her palate. Rose spoke up in a nervous yet informative tone. Ice may be rare, but it's not that hard to come by among the nobles, and it's not particularly unique. Lebusu grinned and reassured Rose in a prideful manner. No worries, what I'm about to prepare is completely different. It's called gelato. Hearing this weird name for the first time, both the girls were confused and said in a puzzled tone, Gelato? What's that? Asu then told them to wait and that they would soon know the wonders of the tasty gelato he was about to make. He announced before starting to boil milk, I'm going to make 2 flavors, vanilla and strawberry. Not knowing what it was going to be, but trusting that if it was Isu's cooking it would be tasty, they watched curiously. He then started explaining as he cooked. First, put sugar, vanilla beans, and separately whisked egg yolks into the milk and let it simmer. When the aroma is strong enough, put the mixture into 2 separate bowls. He then explained, add crushed raspberries into one of them and mix them with the milk. He left the bowls to cool down a bit and let the flavors be absorbed. Then he moved on to the next step. Next, prepare a silver bowl filled with ice. Here you mix salt with ice in a 1-to-1 ratio. Seeing this, Rose spoke up in a worried tone. Why are you adding salt into an ice dessert? Annoyed by her questioning and disturbance, he replied back in a sassy tone, Hold on, I'm not done yet. He then calmed himself down and continued explaining, Now I'm going to put what we made earlier into this ice bowl and mix it. Although it might seem that Isu knew what he was doing, the truth was that he found this recipe on the internet and hoped it would turn out good. The looks from both girls were a bit scary and disheartening because they showed their mistrust in him due to his addition of salt into the ice. As Isu kept stirring and checking on how the gelato was doing, it eventually started freezing. Seeing this, Rose spoke up in an amazed voice. Incredible. It's gradually freezing. Isu, are you a mage too? Hyen replied back to Rose with a prideful tone. What did I tell you? He's the bread mage. Listening to this, Rose agreed and admitted that Isu was a bread mage. Isu laughed nervously and continued to explain the procedure of gelato. Once it's frozen to some extent, add some air to achieve a chewy texture while stirring, and repeat this process 2 or 3 more times. After this continuous procedure of scooping and making it fluffier, it was finally ready. He scooped some and served it in a crystal-clear bowl, garnishing it with mint leaves. As it was ready, he asked both of them to try. He then spoke with a confident tone, "Oh, I've only made a small amount for now, but I'll need to make more for the huge crowd at the International Market Festival. So I was thinking if Hyen could help out with the ice." Suddenly, the girls took a scoop of the gelato, and they both started shivering with their mouths full of it. He was worried and asked, "Hey Yen, JJ?" This was a bit confusing for him as to why the girls were trembling and lifting their spoons in the air like they were in some kind of battle or had completed some race. Both Hyen and Rose had tasted a bite of this amazing dessert, and as soon as they did, they were frozen and their bodies trembled. Confused by this action, Isu called out to them, but they didn't answer. After some time passed, both of them stopped trembling. Rose was the first one to speak up with an excited and childish tone. "What's this? It's so delicious. Did you say it's delicious? Did you say it's jello?" This sudden burst of energy made Isu a bit shocked, but he nodded after understanding her question. Rose then spoke up with a delighted tone. "I've never had an iced dessert this creamy and delicious before, not to mention its chewy texture." This amazing response by Rose was enough for Isu to know that what he had created was amazing and would definitely work market magic at the international festival. Market. He then asked Rose in a calm tone, "How is it? Do you think nobles would like it?" Rose shouted back in an excited tone, "Of course." Hyen then added with a rare expression of excitement, "It's so soft that one might mistake it for cream." Isu was a bit taken aback by Hyen's rare display of energy and emotion, but this also made him feel relieved. If Hyen agreed to the taste and liked it, then it meant it was a suitable dish to be served at the festival. Feeling relieved and happy, he watched both girls digging into the gelato again and again. Then the time arrived when Rose, due to her energetic scooping of gelato, got a brain freeze. She spoke up in a pain-bearing voice while pressing her forehead with her hand. "Oh, my head is hurting from eating cold food in a rush." Although having a brain freeze and the sensation was painful, she yearned for more and said, "This is so good. I want it all to myself." Hyen, the ice queen who didn't show much emotion, spoke up. "I usually don't like cold food, but this isn't too bad." Seeing this reaction, Rose spoke up in an irritated tone, "Nonsense. I saw you devouring it. Give it to me if you don't want it." This infuriated Hyen, and she replied in a cold tone, "No." This was enough to spark the inner wild beast within them. The fight over the last cup of gelato was going to be intense when Isu stepped up and calmed them down. He thought to himself, "I'm glad that at least they both enjoyed it." After calming them down completely, he turned to Rose and asked her, "Then why don't you go and get the final permission from your parents?" Even after being taken far from Hyen, Rose was gritting her teeth, but after listening to Isu, she grinned and replied in her usual energetic tone, "Fine, make me 2 more. I'll bring them to let them taste it." She then turned to Hyen, and after giving some thought, she spoke up. "By the way, Hyen?" Hyen didn't reply but looked at Rose. Rose then asked, "Have you been to the International Market Festival before?" After understanding her question, Hyen replied in a nonchalant manner, "No, never. My so-called father would leave me behind and take his new wife and her bastard of a son instead." Realizing the dark turn of this situation, both Isu and Rose turned silent. After some time, Rose spoke up with a heavy feeling, "Oh, I see." She then nudged Isu to convince Hyen to come to the International Market Festival. Noticing her look and nudge, Isu was a bit confused as to why she was doing that, but then he remembered what they both talked about. Isu then asked, "Hey, Hyen replied in a suspicious tone, "What?" Noticing her questioning glare and suspicious tone, he laughed nervously and asked, "Want some bread?" Rose then slipped out of the room with the 2 bowls of gelato that were prepared by Isu to bring to her parents for approval. After a few days and with the approval of the count for the gelato, Isu called for the head chef to come to his personal headquarters. The head chef was a bit scared and confused as to why he was called, but he abided by the request and headed to Isu's room, knocking softly on his door. Isu then allowed him to enter. The head chef entered the room and with a confused and nervous tone asked, "You called for me, sir?" Isu nodded and gave him a warm smile. He then said in a gentle tone, "Please have a seat. I have something to discuss with you." The chef understood and headed towards the couch. He was a bit hesitant before sitting down on it. Noticing the nervous and tired look on his face, Isu offered, "Here, have some herb tea and please just relax." Noticing Ie's gentle demeanor and kindness, the chef was a bit confused and dumbfounded. He asked again in a confused tone, "Thank you, sir. If I may ask, why have you called for me, sir?" Isu then spoke with a warm and gentle tone, his expression showing empathy towards the chef. "I'm sure you're stressed over coming up with new menu items. Am I right?" The chef spoke up in denial, disagreeing with Isu. "Of course not, sir. I'm just doing my job, that's all." He then continued with a tired tone, "With many important guests expected to attend the festival, I have to think day and night about how to enhance the experience. Nevertheless, my ideas are nowhere near yours, sir." He ended his talk with a light nervous chuckle. Isu nodded in understanding. After some time he spoke up. "Back from where I come from, baking is a big part of our culture. My mother was also passionate about baking as well." The chef nodded in understanding. Isu then continued to explain his idea. "Spices like ginger and cinnamon are particularly inexpensive and readily available. So my point is, if it's all right with you, I would like to pass on my mother's recipe to you." After hearing Isu was willing to share his family's secret recipe, there was shock written all over the head chef's face. Isu was a bit taken aback and said in a warm tone, "I'm not necessarily insisting that you use my recipe, but by referring to it you might come up with even better ideas." The head chef was in tears due to Isu's kindness and selflessness. He spoke in a grateful tone, "I don't know how to thank you, sir. In fact, I was quite stressed about developing new menu items, so I truly appreciate your understanding." Feeling overwhelmed by the tears and grateful tone of the head chef, Isu spoke up in a comforting tone, "It's okay, let's set aside the emotions for now and start writing down the recipe." The chef nodded and started jotting down the recipes that Isu gave. Isu then explained to us, "I gave him a total of 3 recipes: churros, butter cookies, and lemon ginger tea." The head chef, after jotting down the recipes, said in an astonished tone, "Sir, your ideas are simply extraordinary." Isu then said in a gentle demeanor, "I already asked to have the ingredients ready, so go ahead and make them now." The chef then added in a curious tone, "Oh, can I also bring the creme brulee by any chance?" Isu replied in a gentle tone, "Of course. How about making your own version by adding toppings of your choice?" This kind gesture was enough to make the head chef cry again, and he replied with gratitude, "Of course, sir. Please share more recipes in the future. I'm always open to learning new recipes." The head chef then got up, bowed in gratitude, and left the room with new profound ideas. Isu was grateful to see this and was excited to see what new recipes would be formed and given for tasting before the International Market Festival by the head chef. After a while, Lucas came and knocked on the door, announcing himself. Isu let him in and awaited what Lucas had to say. Lucas then said in a calm and gentle tone, "Sir, Mr. Steve and his son have arrived at the Southern Inn." Isu nodded and asked for the directions to the Southern Inn. After some time, he left Medai Castle and walked down the road in Medai City. He was still confused about where it was located but remembered the address. After a bit of walking, he spotted the Southern Inn and knocked on the door. A familiar young boy's voice came from inside. "Who is it?" Isu called out his name, and then the door opened with the boy smiling brightly and warmly at him. He then said, "Baron Bloom, I heard you finally earned your title." He continued in an excited tone. "Goodness, I knew it. So was selling mirrors more like a side business? Where is your estate located? Are you not going to visit a Romania city anymore?" Feeling overwhelmed by the number of questions, Isu asked him to limit it to one question at a time. He then asked him, "Are you alone?" The young boy laughed and replied, "Well, answer is yes. My father is away attending to business." Isu understood and then asked him, "Then would you care to join me for a walk?" The boy agreed and they went to a park nearby the inn. The boy asked Isu about how the lessons were going. Isu replied honestly, they are very boring. The boy was happy about Isu's honesty. Isu then asked the boy, by the way, you know the International Market Festival is being held here, right? The boy nodded eagerly and spoke, of course. We're planning to stay for about a week during the festival period since it's on our way back and forth. Isu smiled and nodded in agreement. Then he shared his idea about what he wanted from him. The boy understood and nodded before confirming, so you want us to spread the word once we return to the city after the festival. Is that it? Isu replied with a nod. Yep. Could you do that for me? The boy smiled widely and replied, I have a knack for spreading rumors like nobody else. He then spoke with a mischievous glint in his eyes, rubbing his hands together like a merchant. But you know there's no such thing as a free lunch, eh? Isu smiled nervously before replying, certainly. What do you want in return? The boy lowered his grin and then smiled widely before saying proudly, one would be to provide us with lodging we can stay in for 7 days. The other is a guarantee of a prime spot at the festival. Plot. Both of them don't seem easy, but still for the stuff I want to do, this is a small price. He then assured the boy, I will talk about it to Rose. The boy then said, if we had to choose one of the 2 requests, it would be the prime spot at the festival. As he understood his requirements and assured him, the boy turned sideways to watch something, which confused Isu about what he was looking at. He followed the gaze of the young boy to a carriage standing behind them. The boy said in an amazed tone, what a magnificent carriage, I wonder who's in it. Isu thought, there's still quite a lot of time left until the festival, so I doubt it's one of the noble guests. After staring at the carriage for a bit, Isu remembered he was a bit busy and said to the boy, I should get going, I'll come back later in the evening if I'm available. The boy nodded and waved goodbye to Isu as he rushed towards Mudai Castle. A young man in his 20s came out of the carriage while wobbling. The man screamed out, intoxicated with alcohol, Father, it is I, your son, Clay Medic, has arrived. Isu was shocked to see the young man all tipsy and causing a ruckus in the Madai Castle's front yard. He then went closer to the head chef, who seemed a bit worried, and asked, who is that? At the sudden voice of Isu, the chef jumped a little and spoke up in a surprised tone, oh, Sir Bloom. He's Sir Clay, the Count's eldest son. Everyone was running after Clay and trying to stop him from causing any more trouble. Seeing this young man causing a ruckus and making every servant of the Medici family worried for him, Isu thought, Count's eldest son. He's totally wasted. After calming down Clay and taking him back to his room, there was peace at last. After some time, he met up with Rose and asked, so Sir Clay is your older brother? Rose nodded and answered back. Yes, he's been learning how to make wine recently, she said before scrunching her face in irritation and speaking up, and he seems completely obsessed with it. Sometimes he forgets that he's the heir of the Maisi family. Listening to this, Isu was a bit concerned about the relationship between the siblings and asked, are you not on good terms with him? Rose shook her head and replied in a solemn tone, no, it's not that. I'm just worried about my family, that's all. Suddenly, she looked sad while saying, to be honest, our family hasn't fully established itself in the world of nobility yet. Isu remained silent and kept listening. After giving some time for Rose to calm down, he asked, I see. By the way, can I ask you a favor? Rose stopped being gloomy and gave Isu a smile while saying, sure. How about we go somewhere and chat while enjoying the scenery? Isu was confused and asked, where should we go? Rose then took him to her hideout, a special place where she escaped from her day-to-day troubles and gave time to herself. After settling down and relaxing a bit, Rose asked Isu in a serious tone, so, what's the favor you're asking for? A bit intimidated by her serious demeanor, he spoke in a formal and gentle tone, could you possibly help me with booking accommodation during the International Market Festival and also securing a good spot for a stall? After listening to Isu's requests, Rose spoke up in a formal and serious tone, is this for a merchant you know? He chuckled nervously and replied, yep, I asked for a little favor too. Dumbfounded by this, Rose asked, so is this in return for the favor? Isu nodded, and that was enough for her. She then asked Isu while patting her chest in a concerned yet questioning manner, what's in it for me if I do that? This dude then took his time to form a good and responsible answer for Rose's question. Well, if things go according to my plan, it could increase your family's reputation. Rose was a bit confused as to why Isu was doing all of this for her family. She contemplated for a bit and then asked him in a confused tone, I appreciate your sentiment, but why are you concerned about our family's reputation? Isu replied in a mock-sad tone while putting a hand on his chest to show his sadness. Well, that's a bit hurtful. Rose's face turned pale, and she asked for forgiveness as soon as possible. Oh, I'm sorry if it sounded like that. It's just that I'm worried. Isu was confused and asked her, worried about what? She then replied in a sad and gloomy tone, getting involved with my family might lead you to being rejected by the high-ranking nobles. With your abilities, you could easily blend in with them. Her low confidence and self-loathing clearly showed that they didn't have a good reputation among the other nobles. Isu then spoke up in a gentle and comforting tone with a confused expression. Don't you think that's undermining you and your family too much? Rose spoke up in an angry tone but then calmed down. No, that's not what I meant. Even though it may seem like we can just live well among ourselves, eventually we'll end up crossing paths with those people somehow. Meeting other nobles might change your perspective too. Isu sighed and asked her in a gentle tone, and what will you do if my perspective changes? Rose snapped and said in an intimidating voice, there's nothing but death waiting for traitors. You heard about what happened to the Faney household, right? Isu chuckled nervously while saying, I have no intention of betraying. After some time and calming Rose down, he then spoke up with curiosity. Oh, by the way, have you heard rumors that the Mage family will be visiting during the festival? I don't think Harren will attend, but do you know anything about them? Rose asked in a serious tone. Where have you heard about this? Isu thought for some time before replying, I overheard what the merchants from the city were saying. Bistiku then thought, if Rose is quiet about this, then this might be an act to degrade the Mediki family by someone. Rose stayed silent for a long time and then gritted her teeth before standing up and speaking in an angry tone. I should go talk to my father about this. He watched Rose leave her hideout in a rush, anger on her face clearly visible. After some time, his instructor arrived and he attended classes till evening. Tired and exhausted from the classes, Isu lay down and tried to relax. That's when he jumped up and covered his ears to stop them from hurting due to the vomiting sounds from Clay. He then spoke up in an irritated tone. Gosh, how long is he going to keep up with this? He then thought to himself, drunk all day every day, then vomiting non-stop. He sighed and thought in a tired tone. I can't even do anything about it since he's JJ's brother. At least he could stop the vomiting. Suddenly, an idea sparked up in his brain, and he called for Lucas, ordering him to go with him to the prep kitchen. After spending some time in the prep kitchen and making a drink that's good for a hangover, he explained, nothing like nice honey water for hangovers. He then asked Lucas to bring it to Sir Clay, which Lucas followed as quickly as possible. He then thought to himself, I hope that does the trick. I'm already exhausted. Of all those lessons, I don't need more stress in my life. He then spoke to himself while stretching. Anyway, I should get ready for the swordsmanship training tomorrow. The next morning arrived and Isu was busy with his sword training master, practicing his sword skills while participating in a mock duel. Sir Kay, who was free from the hangover, called out to Isu. Isu turned around to see who was calling him. That's when he got struck by his instructor, and he yelled in pain. Kay then asked for forgiveness for his bad timing. The swordmaster greeted Kay and then turned to Isu with a serious expression. Baron Bloom, you have been stabbed 89 Daidmachi 4 times so far. Please focus. Su yelled in protest while clarifying himself. Hey, Sir Kay was calling me. How can I ignore him? Noticing this misbehavior, the instructor said, we need to go over your manners again too. After seeing how tired Isu was, the swordmaster declared enough for today and took his leave. Isu then realized something. I should have just bought that certificate for 1,000 gold. The training to be a count is extremely hard. Isu sighed and turned to Kay with a gentle smile. Kay smiled back and reached for his hand before saying in a gentle tone, pleasure to meet you, Baron Bloom. Isu was happy to see that Kay wasn't hung over and now seemed sober. He then replied with gratitude, yes, nice to meet you too. Then in a questioning tone he asked, but may I ask what brings you here? Kay replied with gratitude in a happy tone, that honey water last night, I heard it was your idea. Isu replied, oh that, yes it was. Are you feeling better now? Kay replied in a jolly mood, it was the perfect remedy for my hangover. Isu smiled and felt relieved that it helped him, then said in a worried tone, I advise you to cut down on the drinking. It's not good for your health. Kay replied with a mock disappointed tone. It seems like nobody is on my side. Yes, you replied with a worried tone and a mild smile. Everyone is worried about you, sir? Kay then responded by sighing in disappointment. Oh, please. Their distress is nowhere near that of this incompetent heir of the family. Kay then replied in a nervous tone while chuckling. Please don't look at me that way, sir. It was just a joke. The CEO laughed awkwardly, and then with a sigh of sadness he replied, in fact, I also once lived a life fueled by alcohol. Noticing the sadness of Isu, Kay felt that he had gone through something heavy. Sensing the heavy air around them, Kay replied with an awkward laugh, I drank honey water not to ease my hangover but to prevent my throat from hurting when I'm vomiting. Kay smiled and replied with a soft smile, I would love to hear more about your story, Baron Bloom. Come join me for a meal. Isu agreed with him. Meanwhile, in the Count's personal library, his personal butler arrived and said in a panicked tone, Sir, rumors are spreading that the Mage family will visit the International Market Festival this time. The Count replied in a stone-cold voice, Yes, I've heard about it from Gigi. The butler replied in a worried tone, So it seems like there will be more customers than expected. The Count nodded and agreed while saying, From what I've heard, a total of 20 families have opened portals and passed through Mount Knots. This was a bit too much for the Medi family, and the rumors that had been spreading could cause more downfall for them. As the royal families from all over the Aromonian Empire were arriving in Medici City, the nervousness and upcoming challenge were becoming heavier. To impress these families, a huge workload had been put on the Medi family's servants, and a huge misunderstanding was the reason for all of this. The Count explained, the reason for these families' arrival is that there is only one mage who can open portals in the Aromonian Empire. However, portals can only be opened in 2 locations simultaneously, so the cost of opening portals is very expensive. Therefore, portals are usually opened only when the imperial family needs to travel. This was a huge headache for the Count, and he let out a sigh in discomfort. He then clenched his head while saying, This is absurd. Because of rumors about the mage household visiting, they're coming in large numbers through the portal. The Count then thought for a while before saying, They must be planning to use this opportunity to humiliate us. The butler understood his heaviness and replied in a worried tone, A large crowd like that must have cost around 10,000 to open the portal. The butler then replied in a comforting yet concerned tone, We're doing our best to take measures, but things aren't looking too bright, right, sir? The Count reassured him, and the butler nodded in agreement and took his leave, worried about what was to come in the future. Meanwhile, Isu, Rose, and Hyan were in the living room enjoying themselves. Isu then introduced them to something. Techa, this is the game I mentioned before, called D-Jenga. I asked the carpenters to make it for me. Confused by this game and not understanding the significance of this pulling blocks game, Hyan asked in an uncertain tone, What's so fun about pulling out wooden blocks? Rose agreed and said, That's what I'm saying. She then continued with a complicated look, strategic thinking and dice throwing. Understanding their misunderstandings, Aiju then clapped before smiling. Now, you don't know until you try it for yourself. Besides, anyone can play this game. People will love it at the festival, he said with a spark in his eyes and a dangerous glint, speaking in a mischievous tone, and the one who makes the tower fall will get a finger flick on the forehead. The girls were a bit confused and looked at him dumbfounded. A finger flick, they asked. He knew that no matter how much he tried explaining it to them, they wouldn't understand, so he said, Go ahead and play it to find out. Rose exclaimed in happiness. Alrighty, this should be easy. But she couldn't do it, and her bratty personality and pride wouldn't accept defeat. So all of them played again and again, and every single time Rose was the loser, getting the most finger flicks on her forehead. She then screamed out in anger and frustration, No fair, this doesn't make sense. How can I lose every single round? She then pointed towards Hyan and spoke in an irritated tone, Especially you. Hyan spoke in a nonchalant tone, What about me? Rose's anger sparked up and her fighting spirit rose as she said, Your finger flick hurts the most, you know that. Let me give you a taste of my flick too. Seeing this turning into a dispute, as you interjected, How about we wrap it up and go eat? Noticing how Rose's knuckles were turning white, he knew she wouldn't settle for a finger flick. Rose then spoke up in an irritated tone while throwing a tantrum. I'm pretty good at playing chess. Let's play that after our meal. As Yu then replied to her, I don't know how to play it and chess is boring, as he wasn't interested in playing it. This only infuriated Rose further, and she was about to throw an even bigger tantrum when the Count's personal butler called for her. She then went towards him and asked, "What happened?" The butler whispered into her ear, "There's something I must discuss with you." This caught Izu's attention and he tried to have a conversation but was requested to leave as this was a personal matter of the Medicae Count. Understanding the privacy of the matter, he smiled and took his leave. He was then taken by Lucas to an establishment near the county. He appreciated the beautiful room given by the Medi family and felt even more respect and gratitude for them. He then thought to himself, "For once, I can be alone." He then turned towards Lucas and said in a merry tone, "You may return to the county, Lucas." This terrified Lucas and he overthought the situation, feeling he was incapable of being helpful to Isu. He then spoke in a scared tone, "Did I make a mistake, sir?" Isu replied in a comforting tone, "No, relax. I just want to spend the next 2 or 3 days meditating alone." Understanding the reason for his departure to the Count, Lucas nodded and then spoke up. "Oh, in that case, I'll instruct the servants to prepare the bathwater, sir." Izu nodded and allowed Lucas to do as he pleased. As soon as Lucas left the room and Izu was alone, he thought to himself in an excited tone, "Alrighty, off to the kitchen. Today's dinner is kimchi stew." He then prepared the ingredients he needed and put the rice to cook while he chopped vegetables and meat for the kimchi stew. Unfortunately, the ingredients were only enough for a single person. After cooking it for a while, a familiar scent arose from the stew and Isu said nostalgically, "Yum, I miss the smell of this." While cooking, he was disturbed by some knocking. Confused by this, he thought to himself, "Who could that be? There's nobody to visit me at this hour." The knocking intensified and he hurriedly washed his hands and ran towards the door. While hurriedly opening it, he asked, "Who is it?" There stood a handsome man in his 20s with a beautiful smile. Confused by his sudden arrival, Isu asked, "What brings you here at this hour?" Seeing Kaylee all alone, he was a bit worried for his safety. Kie then replied in a gentle and polite tone, "I bought some cheese and wine." "Oh, not for me, of course. It's a gift for you. Here you go." He laughed nervously and handed the package to Isu. Isu smiled, and then a tasty scent reached Kei's nose. He then turned to Isu and asked in a curious tone, "Say, are you cooking, Baron Bloom?" Isu turned to Kei and invited him to join him for dinner. Kei nodded and entered Izu's establishment. Noticing the kimchi stew, he asked with interest, "Smells quite peculiar. What is this dish called?" Izu laughed nervously and then replied after thinking for some time, "It's pork stew with kimchi, a specialty from my hometown." He then thought to himself, "Gotta act natural in situations like this." He then said, "Looks like the rice is ready as well. Please have a seat and I'll bring them to you." He nodded and then spoke, "That's all right. I'll help you carry the bowls downstairs." After settling down with the utensils and bowls, Izu brought the rice and stew to the dining table. Watching the stew and rice served into his bowl, Kei spoke in an intrigued tone, "This looks appetizing, Baron Bloom." After taking a spoonful bite of the stew and rice, Izu was hoping that Kei liked it. After chewing and analyzing the flavors for a while, Kei then spoke up in a very refined manner. "Indeed, it has a very unique taste, the harmony of cabbage, pork belly, and shallots."